He died unexpectedly as a commoner's child and suddenly became a member of a wealthy official family. Is it a different kind of life, or a continuation of a promiscuous and indulgent life? A innocent younger sister, a cold and alluring female boss, an injured old lover, this should have been the life clues of two people, but from then on, they all intertwined on his own keywords of the novel. Reborn Steel Tycoon no pop-ups, Reborn Steel Tycoon TXT Complete Collection Download, Reborn Steel Tycoon Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Who will attend their funeral? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Who would sit quietly in the car waiting to attend their own funeral? Chen sat in the car, looking out the window at the sunlight shining through the shade of the ancient elm trees in front of the temple. The shadows were mottled like glass, like the slumber of death, leaving him feeling empty. The tower cemetery behind has 3 Buddhist pagodas built during the Republic of China era, adjacent to the millennium-old temple Tianning Temple. These 3 pagodas were originally the largest ethnic capital family in Donghua City during the Republic of China era. The Sun family built a private pagoda garden, which once housed 3 statues of Guanyin, gold, silver, and jade. They were well known throughout the province for a while. On the eve of the liberation, the Sun family moved overseas with their families to settle down, and the Sun family's fields, houses, and properties, as well as this Buddhist pagoda garden, were subsequently converted into public land. In the 1950s, after the Buddha pagoda garden was converted into a people's cemetery, most nearby citizens stored the ashes of their relatives in the pagoda cemetery. In the garden, big trees thicker than arms can be seen everywhere, lush and lush, the water pavilion, mountains, and rocks are all over the garden. If you're not afraid of the misfortune of the dead, the pagoda cemetery is the most worth visiting scenery in the southern suburbs of East China. There is a small square outside the gate of the pagoda mausoleum. Shen Hui parked his car next to the small square, under the lush shade of trees, and watched as a liberation truck slowly drove over and stopped in front of the gate of the pagoda mausoleum. Shen Hui saw his long-time friend and colleague Zhao Dong at the city steel plant stop the car, and got out of the driver's seat first. He quickly walked around to the right side of the car and opened the car door. The little girl got off the car holding a lead gray urn, with tears still hanging on her clear face and her eyes swollen with tears. She called Shen Hui, who was sitting in the car, to look at the tears and brush them straight down, dripping onto the steering wheel. Relatives and friends who accompanied the funeral procession came down from the back carriage one after another with wreaths. The couplet was written in the official script of a young girl named Wan Xiu. The mournful voice cannot be contained, the flowing clouds live, and the crying voice follows the wild crane flying. Mourning for my brother and grandson, Haiwen. 3 days had passed, and the initial shock and chaos had not completely disappeared. However, seeing the little girl so heartbroken, Shen Hui's heart became clearer with waves of piercing pain. He wanted to open the car door and rush out, loudly telling the heartbroken little girl. Xiaoli, I am Haiwen. I'm not dead, I'm still your brother. Unfortunately, he is now living in someone else's body, and no one knows him anymore, including his younger sister, relatives, and former colleagues. Shen Hui tightly grasped the steering wheel with his hands, his nails deeply pinching into his flesh without any pain. He should have died. The urn held by the little sister contained the ashes from the cremation of his deceased body, but his consciousness and soul lived in the bodies of others. There were 2 colleagues who were accompanying him for the funeral, who were in front of him. They did not enter the tower cemetery, but instead walked this way, standing under the shade of a tree smoking and resting. They did not notice that there were still people sitting in the small car parked by the roadside. It's really a pity that Haiwen just died like this. If we had known this ending, it would have been better if we had forced ourselves to go to the city with Old Bear. Old Xiong went to the city to transfer Haiwen along with him. However, at that time, the factory cooperated with Little Japan to carry out technical renovation, and they wanted to build a continuous casting furnace. The factory couldn't do without Haiwen. At the end of the day, it was also Haiwen who was soft-hearted. He followed Old Bear to the city with all his heart and licked Goo Monkey, the leader of the city, who came to power. At that time, he was able to stop him. Can you tell me, Haiwen has been struggling these years. Why does he live so hard? Isn't it just that his family has no power or influence? The more talented Haiwen is, the more he will be suppressed under Gu Monkey. After all, he is afraid that Haiwen will end up riding on his head. Haiwen has been living really hard these years. This time, he was admitted to the doctoral program at Yanda, and he didn't have to look at Gu Monkey's face anymore. Unexpectedly, this happened. The matter is, this heavenly thief is not fair to his mother. Haiwen is dead. His sister Xiaoli, who was originally dependent on him, suddenly became lonely. In fact, the most painful thing in her heart was still her, and she didn't know what to do in the future. Listening to his former colleague standing by the car, Shen Huai felt mixed emotions. Son Haiwen's life is his life. Speaking of his life experience, who can be clearer than himself? He graduated from the provincial university in 1986 and was later assigned to the municipal steel plant. With a solid academic foundation, he only spent more than a year understanding the production technology in all aspects of the municipal steel plant, becoming an absolute technical backbone in the factory. Even without a background, he was highly valued by Xiong Wenbin, the former director of the steel plant in the city, also known as Xiong, as discussed by his colleagues earlier. Within 2 years, he served as the workshop director and set a record in almost 300 state-owned enterprises in the city. Later, when the municipal steel plant established a branch in Xinjiang, Xiong Wenbin proposed that he be appointed as the director of the branch. At that time, he had only been at the municipal steel plant for less than 3 years. However, after Xiong Wenbin was transferred from the city steel plant, especially after he was quickly transferred to a non-official department in the city, his lack of background was completely exposed. Perhaps the forward Mang Taishan, with his exceptional talent and technical foundation, has also been subjected to double exclusion and suppression. In the past 2 years, he has been completely kicked into the boiler room. In fact, going to the city with Xiong Wenbin may not necessarily improve the situation. Xiong Wenbin can be said to be one of the most capable figures in Donghua's enterprise management. In the mid to late 1980s, he managed the city steel plant and achieved brilliant results of paying annual profits and taxes exceeding 300 million yuan. Xiong Wenbin was initially transferred to the city as the Deputy Secretary General of the municipal government and Director of the Enterprise Office. Everyone thought that Xiong Wenbin would soon be promoted to a more important position. Who knew that Xiong Wenbin's transfer was just a trick played by some people in the city, making it easier for others to control the city's steel plant? Xiong Wenbin, who had been in the city for less than a year, was kicked to the position of Deputy Director of the Policy Research Office of the Municipal Party Committee and Government, as if he had become a peripheral figure in the Donghua officialdom, and so far there has been no sign of his success. How much better off would he be in the city with Xiong Wenbin than at a steel mill? Looking back on his past life, Shen Huai sat in the car, feeling bitter in his heart. He has seen through it thoroughly. In places like Donghua, where the economy is underdeveloped and there are few opportunities to stand out, it is still controlled by those with backgrounds and power. Even if he has the ability and talent, it is difficult for him to have great opportunities for development. Especially when others cleverly take advantage of others, flatter their horses, and keep themselves clean, it is the most fatal mistake. This world has never been fair. He didn't have the thought of leaving the city steel plant, but in the Donghua area, there aren't many places where he can showcase his skills without leaving the city steel plant. There are several private enterprises in Donghua City, which may appear to have a decent scale, but behind the scenes they may not be as clean as state-owned enterprises. The management of these family-owned enterprises is also controlled by nepotism. Once again, at that time, his father had already passed away, while his mother was seriously ill. His younger sister was still young, and the situation did not allow him to leave Donghua and go to other places for development. Although he lived a difficult life at the city steel factory, his income was relatively stable, and he was able to support his family alone. His mother passed away a year ago due to serious illness, and he successfully passed away and was admitted to the doctoral program in the Department of Economics at Yen University. I thought this was an opportunity to break out of the small circle of Donghua with my little sister, but I didn't expect an accident to happen 3 days ago. On that day, Vice Mayor Chen led a team to visit the city steel plant to inspect the most important technological transformation achievements in recent years. He temporarily transferred them from the boiler room to serve as a technical instructor. Just as he climbed onto the thermoelectric blast furnace and explained to Vice Mayor Chen and his team about the technological transformation of the city steel plant over the years, the rusted railing under his command suddenly broke, causing him to fall from a height of 20 meters. The time of the fall was very short, and his mind was blank. He only remembered hitting the left shoulder of Deputy Mayor Chen secretary before the fall, and then he became completely unconscious. When he woke up, he was already lying in the hospital. The doctors around him, as well as other people who seemed familiar but couldn't be ruled out, looked at him with concern and said, Secretary Chen, you finally woke up. He couldn't figure out what had happened at the time, but the specific process could still be heard from someone else's mouth. It was really close. That worker almost fell off while rubbing against Mayor Chen's nose. Secretary Chen, you are also very lucky. You just rubbed your left shoulder. Apart from dislocating, the scratch is quite severe and needs to be hospitalized for observation. The city steel factory should really rectify itself. It's just a matter of 1 or 2 workers falling and dying these days. If the news of Mayor Chen inspecting the enterprise but hitting the workers spreads, the officials in Donghua will still have the face to go out. It seems that at that moment, he, who should have been Sun Haiwen, inexplicably became the secretary of Vice Mayor Chen Shen Huai. It took him a long time to roughly understand what had happened. When he fell to the ground, his consciousness had already detached from his body and should have completely dissipated, bidding farewell to this world. However, the incident occurred when he hit the left shoulder of Deputy Mayor Chen secretary before falling to the ground. The impact of hitting his left shoulder was not a big deal, but a sudden shock from an accident that scared Chen secretary to the brink of death. If consciousness were a tangible existence, at that moment, Secretary Chen consciousness would collapse due to strong fright, while his consciousness would burrow into Secretary Chen mind and survive. To put it more simply, Secretary Chen was actually scared to death at that moment, and he was parasitic in the body of Secretary Chen Huai. Shen Huai's injury was not a big deal, and he spent 3 days in a daze in the hospital. Today, an elderly patient passed away in the hospital. The crying of his family woke him up, and he suddenly realized that as he parasitized other people's bodies and adapted to a new identity in shock and chaos, his younger sister must be in great sorrow for his unexpected death, and from then on, she will become lonely and helpless. Shen Huai woke up in shock. Where could he ignore the doctor's advice? I immediately rushed back to the city government and picked up a car, then headed towards Meishi town, which is adjacent to the southeast suburbs of the city. Shen Huai was like this. Starting from noon, he witnessed his little sister holding a funeral for him with the help of relatives and friends, sending his body to the crematorium for cremation, and also witnessed the urn box being sent to the Tianning Temple Pagoda Cemetery for storage. Watching the little girl in agony, Shen Huai was so powerless. The little girl, as well as his familiar friends and family, regarded him as a stranger. If we talk about one person, one world, from the moment of falling and colliding, he must live in the world of Chen secretary Shen Huai, and cannot return to Sun Haiwen's world. Chapter 2. Who will make you unable to leave? You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are too many things in this world that cannot be left behind. If they die at the moment they fall from a height, Shen Huai's sister Xiaoli, who will be left alone from then on, must be the most reluctant to leave. The urn was stored in the pagoda cemetery, and the mourners soon walked out again. Seeing Xiaoli's colorless, transparent white face and swollen eyes from crying again from a distance, Shen Huai's heart was once again pierced hard. Zhao Dong, a long-time friend and colleague of the city steel factory, drove the truck borrowed from the factory to escort Xiaoli and his relatives and friends back to Meishi town. Shen Huai couldn't rest assured and had no excuse to approach. He could only drive far behind the truck and follow him to Meishi town. Meishi town belongs to Shipu County under the jurisdiction of Donghua City, but it is geographically adjacent to the downtown area of Donghua. Within Meishi town and Donghua City, there is a wide Meishi River separated by a cement bridge built in the late 1960s, which connects with the city center. Shen Huai just followed outside the old house in the east of Meishi town and parked his car under the shade of trees on the roadside. What else can he do at this moment besides watching from afar? Returning to Meishi, it was almost dark and relatives and friends were leaving one after another. Zhao Dong also drove back to the city with several colleagues. Shen Huai sat in the car and saw everyone else leaving, but his sister Law stayed behind to accompany Xiaoli. He felt a little more at ease, lowered his car chair, and lay down with clothes in the car, still feeling uneasy about leaving. In the past 3 days, Shen Huai's mood has been in chaos, both physically and mentally exhausted, and he doesn't know when he will fall asleep after parasitism. Shen Huai still retained most of the memory fragments of his original owner. For Shen Huai, these memories were unfamiliar for a moment, belonging to the previous Shen Huai. Even if these memory fragments can be brought to mind like playing a movie, the sense of unfamiliarity cannot be eliminated. Just like playing a movie, playing someone else's life, he is just the audience. It is precisely this sense of unfamiliarity that Shen Huai can be very certain that the previous Shen Huai no longer exists. In his sleep, Shen Huai heard his phone ring and only thought it was a dream sound. In 1993, even a pager could attract people's attention in Donghua City, let alone a mobile phone. The phone beeped, and Shen Huai just hugged his arm, wanting to lie down more comfortably. Subconsciously, he thought that the sound of the phone had nothing to do with him. About 5 or 6 seconds later, Shen Huai suddenly woke up and heard him rush from the hospital to the city government to get his car out. He did indeed throw a phone and wallet onto the dashboard. Shen Huai sat up in shock, patted his head, and secretly warned himself. What do you think? You can only live as Shen Huai in the future. Shen Huai squinted at the sun and didn't expect to sleep until **o'clock. The old house had already been locked from outside, and he didn't know where Xiaoli had gone early in the morning. Shen Huai leaned forward and picked up his phone, hesitating for a moment, but still answered the call. The voice on the other end of the phone was both familiar and unfamiliar to Shen Huai. Familiarity arises from past memories, while unfamiliarity arises from Shen Huai's own clear understanding that he is living in place of others. Secretary Shen, where are you? Apart from the mayor's cars, the city government only has 3 small cars that can be motorized. You drove that 9 car out and didn't come back overnight. Have you ever thought about what the government should do if someone urgently needs to use it today? If your injury is not serious, hurry up and drive back to the city. The other party's voice was low and murky, and a round face with a big fat nose flashed through Shen Huai's mind. This was the voice of Gu Yongqiu, the Secretary-General of the municipal government. Gu Yongqiu, who is over 40 years old, is actually fair-looking, but he has a few white marks on his face. Everyone calls him Gumatsi from behind. It can't be said that he came out of the hospital and parked his car outside Meishi town to sleep all night. Shen Huai's voice was raw and he replied, I know, I'll go back. Gumatsi didn't say anything more and hung up the phone. Shen Huai did not take Gumatsi's insincere questioning to heart. The officialdom is often composed of different circles. If you don't belong to this circle, you belong to that circle, and each circle often has only one boss. Gumatsi is from Gao Tianhe, the city mayor, while Shen Huai is the secretary of Chen Mingde, a member of the city committee and deputy mayor. Although Shen Huai's level is only slightly inferior to Gumatsi's, he belongs to different circles and follows different bosses. He and Gu Yongqiu are always at ease. I don't know where Xiaoli went early in the morning, so Shen Huai had to drive back to the city first. Shen Huai had just driven into the city government compound when he saw Gomatsu standing in front of the steps of the city government building waiting for him. Just as Gomatsu kicked his nose and face, seizing the opportunity to scold him, Shen Huai cursed in his heart. He still parked the car, rolled down the car window, and asked, "Secretary General Gu, isn't it just standing here waiting for me?" Gu Yongqiu's face was gloomy, as if he didn't hear the provocative tone in Shen Huai's words. He said, "The preliminary conclusion of the accident that occurred 4 days ago at the city steel plant has already been reached. Mayor Chen wants me to go and listen to the report. If you have nothing to do, Mayor Chen asks you to come with me. After all, you are also a victim and know the situation at that time. Donghua City is neither big nor small, with a population of 1,100,000 in the urban area. As a pillar enterprise of Donghua City, Chigang Factory has always held a significant position in the city. Since its establishment in the 1950s, it has produced more than 10 city and county leaders for the city and its affiliated counties. Mayor Gao Tianhe, Secretary General of the Municipal Government Gu Yongqiu, and Deputy Director of the Political Research Office of the Municipal Party Committee in Municipal Government Xiong Wenbin all came from the municipal steel plant. At this time, Gu Tong, who was the director of the city steel plant, was also a confidant of the city mayor Gao Tianhe. This falling accident was the result of Vice Mayor Chen Mingda's eyes, nose, and foundation, which is why the city attaches such importance. Otherwise, 1 or 2 workers in the factory would have fallen and died, and in Donghua City, even a small splash of water could not have been stirred up. Gu Yongqiu also holds the position of deputy leader of the Municipal Government Safety Production Leading Group. Although it is reasonable for him to intervene in this matter, considering his relationship with the municipal steel plant, Shen Huai, even with his fingers crossed, knew that it was mostly a matter of indifference. How could the municipal steel plant be held responsible? Shen Huai was somewhat reluctant to enter the city steel plant again at this time. Whether it was his past life or his new life, he needed time to adapt. Gu Yongqiu only assumed that Shen Huai would not refuse the instructions of Vice Mayor Chen Mingda. He didn't dare Shen Huai to answer or not, so he opened the car door and sat in directly. Gu Yongqiu looked at the phone on the dashboard and frowned. He, as the Secretary General of the city government, was about to replace his big brother with a modern mobile phone, and the application report was still pressed against Chen Mingda's desk. This brute, who was overpowered by 5 people, started using his phone first. Unable to drive Gu Yongqiu away, Shen Huai had no choice but to accompany him to the city steel plant to start his true, new day. The city steel plant covers over 2,000 acres in the north of the city, and it takes some time to drive into the gate before reaching the magnificent office building of the steel plant. Without seeing Gu Tong, the director of the city steel plant, come out to greet him, Shen Huai and Gu Yongqiu walked directly into the office building and headed straight to the director's office. Passing through the office of the production safety department, I heard intense arguments coming from inside. How did the accident happen, Zhou Dazue? You know it in your heart. How can you reconcile with the city and push the responsibility, and I can't control it? But if you want to deduct Haiwen's compensation, do you still have a conscience when Zhou Dazue touches his chest? This is Zhao Dong's voice. Shen Huai didn't expect to catch up with Zhao Dong in the production safety department to fight for compensation for himself. Shen Huai stopped and glanced at Gu Yongqiu. The Zhou Big Mouth mentioned by Zhao Dong happened to be Gu Yongqiu's uncle, and it was precisely because of Gu Yongqiu's relationship that he climbed to the position of director of the production safety department at the municipal steel plant. Zhao Dong, don't be so angry. How to determine the nature and responsibility of the accident? It was the conclusion led by factory director Gu. Sun Haiwen illegally climbed a high ground in front of the city leaders, which led to the accident of falling and dying. This was witnessed by dozens of people present with their own eyes. The factory had already paid for Sun Haiwen's funeral, and his sister wanted to replace him in the factory. What other compensation would be needed? This was Zhou's voice. Zhou Dazue, what are you saying? Xiaoli is only 16 years old. Can't he just enter the factory without going to school? Even if he replaces Haiwen, how can he get less compensation? Zhao Dong, you are also from the city steel factory. Shen Huai heard this voice, which was quite unfamiliar to him. Perhaps it was a new employee of the production safety department, standing up to help Zhou De mouth. You know what the situation is in the factory. Don't say that you can't get too much compensation now, even if you can get it out. If someone dies in the factory in the future and their families come to the factory to extort 108,000 yuan, will the factory continue to handle it? What are you talking so much nonsense about? Drive people out and make trouble again next time. Just report to the police. Shen Huai heard that Zhou Dazue seemed to have lost his patience, and when he heard his words decline, he saw the office door being opened from inside. Xiaoli, who was nowhere to be seen in the early morning, was forcefully pushed out from inside. His clothes and sleeves were hung on the doorknob, and he tore a section with a loud bang. His thin and weak arm also had a blood mark. Upon seeing this scene, Shen Huai's heart was filled with evil fire as he rushed up and punched Zhou, who was standing inside the door pushing people out, in the face. You damn it. I watched with my own eyes as the armrest broke, causing someone to fall off. This kind of mess, can you still confuse black and white in your mouth? Zhou opened the door and pushed someone out, but how did he expect to receive a punch in person? Zhou had a severe pain in his mouth, nose, and head, with stars in his eyes, and stumbled backwards. It's just that Shen Huai didn't think about letting go of him with just one punch, and chased after him. His left shoulder didn't work hard, and his right punch hit him in the face one after another, until Zhou fell to the ground and changed his foot to kick. This scene made Gu Yongqiu, Zhao Dong, and others standing next to him dumbfounded. After a while, the person next to him remembered to hold Shen Huai, who was raging, around his waist. Chapter 3. Will it be a stranger from now on? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Update time. 12.06. Thank you for the support of Brother, Red Robe Watchman's Customs. The new book was uploaded in less than 24 hours, and the official came out of the support. Seeing so many old friends warmly supporting me, I am truly happy in my heart. I am also full of motivation to write the new book. Shen Huai's left shoulder injury was not yet healed and he couldn't exert force, but his right fist hit Zhou Dazue 5 or 6 times in a row, hitting him to the ground and kicking him with his foot. It wasn't until Gu Yongqiu, Zhao Dong, and others regained consciousness that someone hugged and dragged him away from his waist. Nonsense. Secretary Shen, what do you think of this place as a place for hooligans to fight? The face of the city government has been disgraced. Gu Yongqiu walked into the office of the production safety department of the municipal steel plant with a gloomy face, slapping his desk with his hands and sternly scolding Shen Huai. Gu Yongqiu went out of the city steel plant and often followed the city mayor Gao Tianhe to inspect it. The old employees of the production safety department recognized him, but most of them still cannot understand the situation. Is the young man who rushed in to beat up Zhou Dazue the secretary of the municipal government who came with Gu Yongqiu? Someone was supposed to call the security to arrest someone, but they quietly put the phone down. As the head of the biotechnology department of the chief engineer's office, Vice Mayor Chen Mingda led a team to inspect the city's steel plant. Zhao Dong was also among the reception personnel and was present at the scene of the accident, so he recognized Shen Huai, who was slightly injured in the accident. Zhou Dazue reversed the truth and blamed Sun Haiwen for the accident, hoping to use this as a way to get rid of the compensation that should have been given to Sun Haiwen's sister. Zhao Dong was also very angry about this and wanted to have a fight with Zhou Dazue. However, he didn't expect Shen Huai, the secretary of Vice Mayor Chen Mingda, to suddenly appear and angrily beat up Zhou Dazue at first. Zhao Dong was also confused. When he woke up with a shock, he felt that Zhou De had hit him unfairly. Subconsciously, he also hugged Shen Huai tightly with other staff members in the office. In the blink of an eye, Zhao Dong regretted it again. How could he have watched Zhou Dezue give him another hard kick to feel happy? Shen Huai hugged Xiao Dong and called Gu Yongqiu to drink loudly, calming down. Seeing Xiao Li standing at the door, it seemed that he was also frightened. Shen Huai then realized that he had just barged in without saying a word, punched Zhou Dezue to the ground with a few punches, and then kicked him with a different foot, which was a bit crazy. At the end of the day, it's also because of the intense emotional suppression in the past few days, and from yesterday until now, I have been worried about whether Xiaoli can survive his unexpected death. When Shen Huai saw Xiaoli rudely pushing out, his sleeves torn, and his arms blood-stained, it was like a spark jumping into a boiling oil pit. No matter how strong his self-control was, it was impossible to restrain himself from exploding. You let go of your hand, hitting this grandson again makes me feel dirty. Shen Huai regained his composure and asked Xiao Dongsong to let go, but there were still other employees from the security department blocking between him and Zhou Da's mouth. He only then saw his sister Law Chindan standing in the office, presumably accompanying Xiao Li over. However, at the moment, it's not about continuing to hit Zhou Da mouth, but about dealing with Gu Yongqiu. Although both of them follow their respective bosses, that is an unspoken rule that cannot be put on the table. After all, Gu Yongqiu is the Secretary General of the municipal government, the Grand Steward of the municipal government, and the direct leader of all personnel in the municipal government office. Shen Huai, in front of Gu Yongqiu and in the office of the production safety department of the municipal steel plant, suddenly got angry and beat up his brother. In law and middle level cadres. Even if Gu Yongqiu wanted to calm things down, it was impossible. Since we cannot calm things down, we cannot be weak in our aura. Shen Huai touched his slightly painful right hand and thought to himself that his physical strength was really poor. After a few more thrusts, he was panting and his fists were weak. He was really a young master who emptied his body for wine and sex. Unlike my previous body, I have exercised in the workshop and can handle small steel ingots weighing hundreds of pounds without feeling tired after working with ordinary workers for a long time. Shen Huai ignored Gu Yongqiu's scolding and walked into the office with a gloomy face. On the desk by the door, there were several documents with the words, Investigation Report on the 9.16 Continuous Casting Workshop Crash Accident at Donghua First Iron and Steel Plant, printed on the cover. Shen Huai thought to himself that Zhou Dezue was probably sitting behind this desk just now, discussing accident compensation with Xiao Dong, Xiao Li, and his sister. Law Chindan. Shen Huai picked up these documents and casually flipped through a few pages. The content of the report was the same as what he had heard with Gu Yongqiu standing outside the door just now. Humph. Shen Huai snorted coldly, holding the report and angrily tugging at his desk, saying, I and Mayor Chen have personally experienced and witnessed the crash accident. Even so, the city steel plant still came up with such an accident investigation report. Are you trying to fool Secretary General Gu, Mayor Chen, or the city party committee in government? Regardless of the situation, if you put off the big hat first, it won't be wrong. Shen Huai looked at the report, printing several copies, and handed one of them to Gu Yongqiu, saying, Secretary General Gu, can you accept such an investigation conclusion? Gu Yongqiu's nose was almost crooked with anger. He asked Shen Huai why he hit someone, but Shen Huai turned around and questioned whether he accepted such an accident investigation conclusion. Gu Yongqiu's face was overcast, and the white spots on his face were bouncing up and down. He didn't answer the report, but remained calm and continued to question Shen Huai. If you have any objections to the investigation conclusion, we can request the city steel plant to further investigate. Who allowed you to hit people easily? I need to report this to Mayor Chen. Secretary General Gu, why do you favor the city steel plant? Faced with Gu Yongqiu's questioning and threats, Shen Huaixi showed no weakness and stared at him with sharp eyes, as if hitting someone was not a serious matter for him. When Director Xiong Wenbin was the plant director, the city steel plant made a profit of 300 million yuan per year. Director Xiong Wenbin was only transferred to the city for 3 years, and what kind of mess did the city steel plant become? As a pillar enterprise of the city, Mayor Chen has never understood the rapid decline of the city steel plant. Secretary General Gu, you also came from the city steel plant. Can you understand what kind of mess the city steel plant has become? Why did steel mills decline so quickly? Isn't the answer clear enough after seeing such an investigation report? Shen Huai's words were like a steel spear piercing Gu Yongqiu's heart, causing him a series of stabbing pains in the chest. Both qi and shock. Gu Yongqiu did not expect Shen Huai to have such a good understanding of the situation of the city's steel mills, but he was more concerned that there were other complex factors behind Shen Huai's words. These words are just spitting out the clump of thatch that has been stuck in my chest for many years. At the age of 22, after graduating from university, Shen Huai entered the city steel factory and devoted the most beautiful 7 years of his youth to this factory. Seeing this factory being controlled by a group of moths and rapidly declining from its peak, how could Shen Huai not feel angry? Not only the municipal steel mills, but also more than 300 state-owned enterprises in Donghua City. In recent years, many of the enterprises that have suffered losses have been successful, and the remaining few enterprises are only struggling for meager profits. Unfortunately, when he saw such a thing before, even if he was angry, he didn't have the opportunity to vent and change. On the contrary, due to lack of background and power, even if one has the ability, they still have to ride on the heads of incompetent juniors such as Gu Monkey and Zhou Dazue and defecate. At this moment, as a member of the Standing Committee of Chen Mingda and Deputy Secretary of the Mayor, he spoke these words. Although it was not possible to immediately change the current situation of the city's steel plant, he also vented a lot, and Shen Huai's heart was also much more comfortable. Even if he were to be fired from public office tomorrow, Shen Huai felt it was worth it to beat up Zhou Da's mouth and say so happily. Seeing Gu Yongqiu speechless with anger, Shen Huai knew that his words still had a deterrent effect on him. Shen Huai saw that his momentum had temporarily shaken Gu Yongqiu, and he turned his head to see Xiaoli and his sister-in-law still standing at the door, pitifully watching everything. Her sleeve was torn in half, her thin and weak arms were exposed, and her snow-white skin was like flawless white porcelain. However, the more fair and tender her skin was, the more glaring the bloodstains pulled out by the doorknob were. Shen Huai's heart wrenched with pain, and he stared at Zhou Demai, who was about to stand up, saying, "You old man, you have the face to hit the little girl again." Shen Huai's eyes gleamed with ferocity, and Zhou Da's mouth trembled as he struggled to stand up, his body lying there and not daring to stand up. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Da's face swelled up and covered in blood, looking both comical and terrifying. Shen Huai was afraid that Xiaoli would be looked at differently on the way back by wearing tattered clothes on the bus. At this moment, Shen Huai couldn't bear to see his younger sister Xiaoli suffer any more injustice. He took off his coat and walked over to hand it to her, saying, "What happened to your grandson Haiwen? The city will further investigate. You should go back and wait for the news first. Xiaoli is like a frightened deer. These days, such a big change has happened, and even if she wants to face it all with strength, she still cannot." Looking at the coat handed over by the big brother in front of her, although there was a familiar and reassuring concern in his eyes, her heart at this moment was sensitive and vulnerable, making her look uncertain at Xiao Dong standing next to her. The expression on Xiaoli's face made Shen Huai's heart ache, and he could only silently shout in his heart. "Xiaoli, I am my brother. So I'll send son Haiwen's sister and sister-in-law to leave first." Xiao Dong didn't take the coat handed over by Shen Huai. Seeing that Shen Huai had no other indication, he took Xiaoli out first. Shen Huai bitterly withdrew his hand. Indeed, he was just an unrelated person. He wanted to express concern, and even was mistaken for representing the city's hypocrisy or malicious intentions. "Thank you, Secretary Shen." On the other hand, Chen Dan, the sister-in-law, thanked her in debt as she left. Looking at Chen Dan's haggard melon seed face, as well as his graceful figure turning around and leaving, Shen Huai felt a bitterness of being a stranger from now on. When Xiaoli was about to leave, he turned his head and cast a grateful glance, which comforted him a lot. The little girl is just like a wounded little beast, becoming very sensitive. I hope she can become strong and endure these days. Chapter 4. Who can't help but swallow their breath. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Updated. 12.06, Make a wish, hoping that the daily number of red votes can explode and update the word count. Why not play a game together called, How many red votes do you cast, how many words do I update? Gu Yongqiu originally intended to use the official authority of the Secretary General to suppress Shen Huai, but he didn't expect Shen Huai to be so soft and hard that he wouldn't eat it. There was no way he could use this prick. Originally, Gu Yongqiu could have directly reported this matter to Chen Mingde. Anyway, Chen Mingde, the standing committee member and deputy mayor, could still suppress Shen Huai. Even if there was favoritism, it was impossible to allow Shen Huai to behave so recklessly at the city steel plant. However, Gu Yongqiu did not expect Shen Huai to be so domineering. In the midst of his words, he pointed his finger directly at the operation and management of the municipal steel plant, which made him unable to think too much. Watching his uncle stand up pitifully for a long time, his swollen face covered in blood, and he didn't know if the injury was severe, Gu Yongqiu tried his best to restrain it, but his anger boiled and surged in his heart, trembling all over. After a while, Gu Yongqiu finally thought of having his uncle sent to the factory medical room for treatment. Shen Huai glanced at other employees in the production safety department in the office and said to Gu Yongqiu, Secretary General Gu, if there's nothing else, I'll go back to the city first. He grabbed an investigation report in his hand and walked out. If Shen Huai stays, he will also lose face. Since Gu Yongqiu has no choice but to take him, he naturally hopes that this beast will leave early. Gu Yongqiu sat there, with a cold face and no sound, as Shen Huai swaggered out. The others were even more shocked by Shen Huai's aura, afraid to speak or come forward to comfort Gu Yongqiu. Old employees all understand the relationship between Zhou Dezue and Gu Yongqiu. Looking at Gu Yongqiu's trembling hands, they can all know that he is on the verge of exploding at any moment. Who has nothing to do with poking this powder barrel? It's not at this time to flatter. Where have all the people from the city steel plant died? Gu Yongqiu angrily smashed a glass on the table. After so long, the leaders of the city steel plant didn't see anyone, which made him feel both embarrassed and angry. Director Gu went to Xinjiang temporarily, and before leaving, he specifically asked Director Zhou to receive Secretary General Gu first. An old employee cautiously replied, "Why don't I go and see if Director Su and his team are at home?" He walked out with his body down and didn't see anyone coming back for half a day. Although Shigang factory has been in a mess in recent years, it is still the largest industrial enterprise in Donghua City, occupying a vast area. Shen Huai drove away and caught up with Zhao Dong, Shaoli, and his sister. Law Chen Dan on the avenue from the office building to the factory gate. There's still some way to the station, I'll take you over. Shen Huai drove over and leaned his head out, saying. Chen Dan and Shaoli hesitated a bit, but it was inconvenient to refuse. Zhao Dong was not at ease and also followed in the car. Shaoli was like a wounded little beast, silent all the way. Shen Huai only saw her occasional gaze through the rearview mirror, and Chen Dan only said a few words of gratitude. Zhao Dong didn't know what topic to discuss with Shen Huai and remained silent all the way. At the Jiulu station in Meishi town, Shen Huai stopped the car and turned to look at Shaoli and his sister. Law Chen Dan. He said, the city has become accustomed to the mud, and this matter may not have a good outcome. Shen Huai is not the secretary of the municipal government who used to know nothing. Over the years, he has seen through every detail of Donghua. Today, he beat up Zhou Dajua and scolded Chen Mingde at most. It's even more serious. It's not a big deal to take disciplinary action and reflect, but the city is unlikely to support high compensation. Strive for as much compensation as possible, as long as it's enough for Xiaoli to go to college. Don't be too persistent about anything else, Chief Xiao, don't have any conflicts with the factory over this matter. Shen Hui found a pen on the dashboard, dismantled a pack of cigarettes, and copied his phone number on a piece of paper. He was afraid of giving it directly to Xiaoli and Chen Dan, which would cause them to have bad thoughts. Instead, he handed the note to Zhao Dong and said, "Chief Zhao, if you have anything, you can call me on this phone." Watching Zhao Dong, Xiaoli, and Chen Dan get off the car, Shen Hui endured the piercing pain in his heart and drove away. Fortunately, Zhao Dong and Chen Dan were by Xiaoli's side, making him feel a little more at ease. Otherwise, Xiaoli, who was only 16 years old and not yet 15 years old, would live alone. How could he not be worried? Chen Dan lifted her drooping messy hair behind her ear, her face a bit haggard, but it was as beautiful as a face washed from clean water. Although the clothes were rough and simple, it did not conceal the mature and plump figure, which was beyond the reach of Xiaoli, who had a beautiful appearance but a thin and weak body that did not grow. Chen Dan didn't notice that the people waiting for the train on the platform couldn't help but look at her sideways. Instead, he was lost in thought as he looked at the small car that had disappeared from the dust. He thought to himself, if her husband, Xiaoli's cousin, had such audacity, she wouldn't have been bullied by the two female elites, Xiaoli, at the city steel plant. Thanks to Zhao Dong and his former colleagues who helped take care of Haiwen at the city steel plant, otherwise she and Xiaoli might not even be able to enter the office building door. Zhao Dong held a note with a string of numbers written in his hand and said to Chen Dan and Xiaoli with some bitterness, "Secretary Shen is also telling the truth. Perhaps the best outcome would be to help Xiaoli fight for college living expenses. Even if it doesn't work out, Xiaoli doesn't have to worry about anything. Although Haiwen has unfortunately left, I, Haipeng, Zhou Ming, and others are still your brothers and will never see you suffer." So, Zhao Dong also hates himself for being useless. Under the eaves, he had to bow his head. He had no background and finally climbed to the position of head of the production technology department of the chief engineer's office through his own efforts. The situation did not allow him to stand up and fight against people like Gu Tong and Zhou Dazui. Watching Shen Hui drive away, Zhao Dong also had an indescribable envy. I thought to myself that although he may seem like a small secretary in the city, he dared to beat Gu Yongqiu's uncle, Gu Tong's confidant, and the director of the production safety department of the city steel plant without any fear in the city steel plant. Before he could clap his hands, he left unscathed, which is what makes his mother have a background. Zhao Dong has been struggling for years and has seen through some things thoroughly. Although he doesn't know much about Shen Hui, he knows that his background is extraordinary and he is definitely not an ordinary municipal government secretary. Although Zhou Dazui punched hard on the face, his face was full of flesh and he trembled as he walked. He didn't suffer much serious injury, and just now he also had nosebleeds on his face, which was frightening. He had been bandaged in the medical room and then regained his strength. It's better to say that he was beaten in front of his subordinates than to say that he was beaten hard by the people in the city, which made his self-esteem even more frustrated. Who else could swallow this breath? Swallowing this breath, it will not become the laughing stock of the entire factory in the future. The key is that his brother in law is standing on the side, watching him being beaten up makes him almost furious. Zhou's mouth was half covered with gauze, and when he came back, he saw another employee nestled in the office. His face couldn't hold back, and he became embarrassed and angry. He cursed sharply in his voice, "What should we do? We're all nestled in the office, waiting to eat shit." He kicked everyone out. Gu Yongqiu was sitting in the office, not yet able to catch his breath. Seeing his uncle's appearance come back, he was even more annoyed. "Brother-in-law, how could such a beast hit my face?" "It was hitting your brother-in-law's face. This matter can't just be settled like this. What's all this nonsense for?" Gu Yongqiu said irritably, thinking that he had some backbone. Even though he was fighting with Shen Hui at the time, he still looked better on his face. This useless thing, now he knew his face was ugly. "I don't have any nonsense. Is this bastard your secretary? Did he beat me up in front of you and leave with a slap on his butt?" How many years will you make others laugh when this news spreads? Brother-in-law, you can't even beat such a small fish to death. If you don't understand anything, don't talk nonsense. Gu Yongqiu sat in his uncle's office, stabbing the pain in his heart and looking even worse. Gu Tong went to Xinjiang temporarily and wasn't in the factory. Who else? The other deputy factory directors extended their heads. Do you know why? Why? Seeing his eldest uncle really following his tone of questioning, Gu Yongqiu wished he could slap him in the face again. He's really a pig's brain. The relationship between the city steel factory and the city is very close, and the factory director Gu Tong and several deputy factory directors below have a clear understanding of the relationship in the city. Everyone knows that they are from Gao Tianhe, and Shen Huai is Chen Mingda's secretary. Shen Huai assaulted his uncle in front of him in the office. The deputy factory directors of the city steel plant. Who would want to come and wade through this muddy water at this time? Gu Yongqiu had to patiently explain to his uncle, I'm afraid that Chen Mingda might intentionally want this beast to make things worse. What does Chen Mingda do to get things done? Are you really stupid or fake stupid? Gu Yongqiu felt despair towards his uncle, who was ignorant and only knew how to eat, drink, and prostitute women. However, to calm things down, he needed to first calm his emotions. Otherwise, he would run to his sister's place to talk nonsense, and his own family would be at the forefront. Chen Mingda was directly dispatched to Donghua by the provincial government. He first served as a member of the Standing Committee of the Municipal Party Committee, and then served as the deputy mayor, responsible for economic work. The provincial government clearly wanted Chen Mingda to replace Mayor Gao. Ah! Zhou Dazue didn't expect so many words behind him. He stood there, his face still burning with pain, but he didn't dare to speak. He understood a little now, knowing that if Mayor Gao were to push him down, his brother-in-law would not have a good life, and if his brother-in-law didn't have a good life, then his days of being popular and drinking spicy food at the city steel plant would come to an end. In this way of thinking, Zhou Dazue felt that beating Shen Huai was nothing. If you lose face, just lose face, as long as you don't lose your position. After seeing his uncle calm down, Gu Yongqiu said earnestly. You should know that now Mayor Gao cannot make a single move wrong and cannot let Chen Mingda find an excuse to cause trouble. Alright, I need to report this matter to Mayor Gao first, and you should stand aside and not speak up. Chapter 5. Guessing the puzzle of the children of a rich family. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Updated. 12.06. Gu Yongqiu picked up the phone and dialed the special line of the city mayor Gao Tianhe, briefly reporting on what had just happened at the city steel plant. Zhou Dazue sat across from his desk and suddenly dialed up when he heard a voice on the phone. Obviously, Gao Tianhe was also very angry when he heard this. The municipal government staff ran to the enterprise for a fight, and no mayor would feel calm after hearing it. Zhou De vaguely heard it, and Gao Tianhe loudly ordered Gu Yongqiu on the phone, you can directly report this matter to Mayor Chen and see how he handles it. Zhou Dazue also knew that the overall situation was important, but his anger couldn't be dispelled. When he heard Gao Tianhe directly tell his brother-in-law to expose the incident to Chen Mingda, he looked at his brother-in-law eagerly. Gao Tianhe asked Gu Yongqiu to directly expose this matter to Chen Mingda, and Chen Mingda naturally could not openly shield Shen Huai. Gu Yongqiu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He knew that Mayor Gao would be furious when he first heard about this, and he probably wouldn't think deeply about it for a while. After waiting for 4 or 5 seconds, when Gao Tianhe calmed down on the other end of the phone, Gu Yongqiu said again, I'm afraid Mayor Chen might use this matter to make other articles. Zhou Dazue didn't hear clearly what Gao Tianhe was saying on the phone. Gu Yongqiu continued, Shen Huai, who doesn't have much brain, said a lot of strange things at the city steel plant today, pointing directly at the company's business failures in recent years. With Shen Huai's water in Huai, I don't think we can see it so deeply, maybe it's Mayor Chen studying the company's problems behind the scenes. If we give Mayor Chen the opportunity to investigate a falling accident as a breakthrough point, the implications may be quite significant. At this point, Gu Yongqiu stopped. Zhou Da's mouth was half open, but he didn't expect any sound to come from the microphone. It must have been Gu Yongqiu's words, which caused Gao Tianhe to ponder deeply. After a long silence, Gu Yongqiu spoke up again and said to the phone, "Yes, I think so too. Shen Huai caused trouble at the city steel plant, maybe it was Chen who instigated it secretly." "Okay, I know." He said twice, "I know," and then Gu Yongqiu hung up the phone. How did Mayor Gao command that this matter be settled? Even if he didn't pursue it for the sake of the overall situation, it was difficult for Zhou to accept the fact that this matter was quietly exposed. Without an explanation, how would he still meet people at the city steel plant in the future? "Never mind, what do you want to do?" Gu Yongqiu was also indignant about trying to endure this cowardly anger. He raised his eyebrows and looked at his incompetent uncle, saying, "Even if there is no conspiracy behind the scenes and this matter is exposed to Chen Mingde, what do you think you can really do with this beast? Why can't we do something?" Zhou Dazue couldn't help but feel angry as he listened to his brother-in-law say such soft words again. He shouted loudly, "Isn't Shen Huai the dog next to Chen Mingde? This dog runs out and bites people indiscriminately. Even if Chen Mingde tries to protect him, he will still use 2 sticks. Let's give everyone an explanation. What's your tone? You're getting angry at me." Gu Yongqiu shouted sternly, unable to suppress Shen Huai or his uncle Zhou Da's mouth, staring at him. Zhou's mouth was still afraid of Gu Yongqiu. With a rough voice, Gu Yongqiu's aura pierced, and he hunched his back and sat there, saying, "What can I get angry at you? Although it was my face that got beaten up like this, in the end, it's not my brother-in-law's face that you've lost. You're in Donghua City, but you've never been bullied like this before. If you can't come tomorrow, then I'll find a few people in the dark and seize the opportunity to beat this beast in a bag. I can't just let it go. Nonsense, if you mess around like this and cause trouble, be careful that no one can protect you." Gu Yongqiu stared at his uncle with sharp eyes, afraid that he would act recklessly behind his back. He restrained his temper and said to him, "This Shen Huai is not as simple as you think." "Why isn't it simple?" "Chen Mingde was airdropped from the province to Donghua, so we can't help but investigate his situation thoroughly," Gu Yongqiu said. "Shen Huai was brought by Chen Mingde from the province to Donghua. Do you think we will miss him?" Zhou remained silent, having heard Gu Yongqiu say that Chen Mingde's arrival in Donghua could potentially threaten the position of the city mayor Gao Tianhe. It was normal for Gao Tianhe to have someone investigate Chen Mingde's background. He knows that Chen Mingde should have a backstage, but he doesn't understand why even a dog next to Chen Mingde can't move. Before coming to Donghua, Chen Mingde was the deputy director of the Provincial Development and Reform Commission, Planning and Economic Commission, while Shen Huai worked as a lecturer at the Provincial School of Economics for over a year. He didn't know what kind of fake university he had studied abroad before, so he had to work hard at the Provincial School of Economics because he lacked ability and business skills. He said he was teaching, but in fact, that was just how it was. Just before he came to Donghua, he even caused a female student at the Provincial School of Economics to have a big belly, but he didn't want to take responsibility and forced someone to have an abortion, resulting in her cutting off her veins and dying. Damn it, it's really not a good bird. Zhou spat and cursed, but he never thought about using a mirror to look at himself. This incident caused a lot of trouble at the Provincial School of Economics, and even many teachers went on strike to demand the dismissal of Shen Huai. However, the Provincial School of Economics only asked him to suspend his position and reflect. Within 2 months of this incident, Shen Huai and Chen Mingde came to Donghua. Gu Yongqiu explained some of his knowledge to his uncle in detail. Zhou Da's mouth smacked as he relied on his brother-in-law at the city steel plant, not daring to act so recklessly. Shen Huai has only been transferred to Donghua for a few months, and his temperament is not honest, Guyongqiu was unwilling to speak up about his inability to suppress his subordinates. Thinking of Shen Huai's face, he couldn't help but frown. He is very reckless in the city government, and even an old director of a municipal bureau came to the city to criticize and report to Chen Mingde. Because his shoes were stained with mud and water and entered Chen Mingde's office, he pointed his face at this little beast and asked him to go out and wipe his shoes. "Who is it?" Zhou Dazue asked. "Who is it? Don't ask around, it's not a shameful thing. There are only a few people who know, and spreading it will make people hate you." Guyongqiu, who has been an official for half his life, is more cautious than others imagine, otherwise he won't be trusted by the city mayor Gao Tianhe. He also said, "This little rascal didn't take me seriously in his life, and even had thoughts about Zhou Yu both openly and secretly." Zhou Yu. That bastard dares to openly show his feelings towards Zhou Yu. At least Zhou Yu is his superior. Zhou opened his mouth and couldn't help but drool at the thought of Zhou Yu's charming face. Humph. Guyongqiu's hum was full of many meanings of disdain, envy, and sourness. In this officialdom, beautiful women, especially those whose husbands were paralyzed in bed due to car accidents, find it difficult to avoid conflict, but Zhou Yu is an exception. Unlike Zhou Dazue, Zhou Yu, the Deputy Secretary General of the municipal government, comes from the Zhou family and has a wide network of contacts in Donghua City. The elders of the Zhou family will not mention that there are many Zhou Yu brothers and sisters, who are either in business or in politics. They all have their heads in Donghua City and also have some relations with the province. Zhou Yu himself started working in the municipal government at an early age, and later married into the family of a former municipal party secretary as his daughter-in-law. Even as a woman, she had a prosperous career in the Donghua officialdom and was very strong. Before the age of 30, she was already the Deputy Secretary General of the municipal government. Don't say that the Zhou family cannot be bullied by outsiders. Zhou Yu's father-in-law is a former secretary of the municipal party committee. Although he has stepped down, his influence still exists. Who wouldn't open their eyes and pursue his daughter-in-law's ideas? Zhou Dazue didn't expect that Shen Huai, a beast, would come to Donghua City and openly target Zhou Yu. Of course, even if Zhou's mouth is not wide open, he knows a truth. If all arrogant people are not trampled to death, it means he still has the capital to continue his arrogance. Zhou Dazue didn't mention the matter of finding someone to hide behind the scenes, but he was also curious about the origin of such a beast and said, "What exactly is this kid?" The files and materials transferred by the organization department only mention that his parents left his hometown since he was young, and his mother passed away when he was 12 years old. Afterwards, his guardian was his maternal grandparents, who went abroad directly after attending high school in Yanjing and returned to China 3 years ago. He did not return to Yanjing, but instead wandered around in Huaihai for more than half a year before finally joining the Provincial School of Economics as a lecturer. It is said that he was applying for a job, and there are also people behind his back who are working hard. How old is this kid this year? 24. Guyongqiu has been secretly following Shen Huai for quite some time now, and the information in the archives is naturally casually mentioned. However, the archives are too rudimentary to make anyone see anything. It's hard to tell how strong the background is. It's impossible to be the son of a big shot in the central government, Zhou said arrogantly. Since Chen Mingde is protecting him so much, is there anything else that cannot be said? Guyongqiu knew that his uncle didn't have a brain, but he didn't expect to be able to get some tips. He thought to himself that working as a middle-level cadre at the city steel plant would give him some training. Secretaries have always been a shortcut to promotion in the officialdom. Approaching the core of power and being easily promoted is one aspect. On the other hand, as a trusted confidant of a leader, one can share the power that he should not have at his level. Just like Shen Huai, although he is only a regular department-level cadre, being able to recklessly beat Zhou Dazue in front of Guyongqiu is ultimately sharing the power and authority that should belong to Chen Mingde, the standing committee member and deputy mayor. Due to these special characteristics, the secretarial positions in power institutions are often occupied by young people with backgrounds but lack qualifications and need for training. But no matter what, when leaders choose a secretary, they will always choose someone who is cautious, stable, capable of handling affairs, and can be trusted by themselves. Shen Huai, with his rebellious and reckless nature, is actually an ignorant and incompetent person. Chen Mingde is a scholarly official who values work efficiency and has strict requirements for his subordinates, even to the point of being harsh. However, he can tolerate someone like Shen Huai working as a secretary by his side, which is quite puzzling. Some people in the city government even secretly say that Shen Huai may be Chen Mingde's illegitimate son. Isn't that right? Apart from this relationship, it cannot be explained why Chen Mingde reluctantly used this petty beast who only knows how to deal with trivial matters as his secretary. Upon closer examination of Chen Mingde's resume, it can be seen that he had been serving in central government departments almost before Shen Huai left Yanjing to study abroad. Later, he was transferred to Huaihai. Before joining the Provincial Planning Commission, he held a temporary post in the Provincial Economic College for a period of time. Comparing the file resumes of Chen Mingde and Shen Huai, if you are a little more careful, you can also see some loopholes in them. If Shen Huai's background is so hard that Chen Mingde must endure him, unless Shen Huai is the son of a central tycoon. But for the children of the central tycoons, if they want to enter the officialdom, even if they are also secretarial positions, except for the State Council, the Military Commission, and the National People's Congress, there are not many positions left for the children of the central tycoons to exercise in central ministries, provinces, and municipalities directly under the central government. Why bother coming to a place like Donghua, which is only at the prefecture and city level, but also at the bird and shit level? Chapter 6. The Past and Present Lives of King Dad. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Update time. December 6, 30. Shen Huai parked his car under the shade of trees on Taowu Road. He knew that he was a completely unrelated stranger, who showed too much concern and affection towards Xiaoli and Chen Dan, which would only backfire and cause unnecessary resentment and rejection. However, at this moment, he couldn't let go of his concern for his sister. It was hard to imagine how Xiaoli could withstand the impact of his unexpected death. The bus returning to Meishi town will pass through Taowu Road. In the past, he used to take this road to go to the city steel plant, and he is familiar with it. At this time, even if he could take a closer look at Xiaoli, he would feel more at ease. I don't know if Gu Yongqiu has exposed this matter to Chen Mingde. Shen Huai knew that this matter had really been exposed to Chen Mingde. Even if Chen Mingde continued to protect him, he would at least publicly scold him to show that he would not tolerate this matter. Maybe we'll have to take disciplinary action and then go to the city steel plant to apologize to Zhou Dezue and eliminate the impact. Shen Huai thought to himself that instead of rushing to the city and passively waiting for training, it would be better to wait for Chen Mingde to call and scold him at the end of the day. Shen Huai was not mentally prepared to enter someone else's life and world. The previous Shen Huai, although his consciousness disappeared at the moment of the falling accident, most memory fragments were preserved. These memory fragments, like stored image data, can be recalled and presented in the mind at any time, but after all, they are the memories of the previous Shen Huai. Shen Huai seemed to be watching a movie. Even though the image was clear, he could clearly know in his heart that it recorded the lives and worlds of others. Although one can enter someone else's life and world with a new identity, this sense of unfamiliarity and alienation cannot be eliminated in 3 or 4 days. After half a year in Donghua, Shen Huai did not have much contact with Gu Yongqiu, so he did not show much bitterness in front of Gu Yongqiu. Even so, his performance today was both shocking and suspicious for Gu Yongqiu, and he eventually wanted to deviate elsewhere. But how should he face Chen Mingde, who knows him better and is more familiar with him? Others only know that Shen Huai worked at the Provincial School of Economics for over a year before being in Donghua, and his reputation at the Provincial School of Economics was not as good. Later, he was transferred to Donghua as an administrative secretary with Chen Mingde. However, after occupying this body, the complex background and past experiences of the previous Shen Huai shocked him greatly. It is difficult for others to connect Shen Huai with one of the few political powerhouses in China, the Song family. Although the old man of the Song family, Song Hua, no longer holds the position of national leader, he is still alive and his influence is still there. The old man married 2 wives before and after, and gave birth to 4 sons and 3 daughters, a total of 7 children, all of whom held important positions in central ministries or state-owned super-large enterprises. The Song family's old officials were also widely distributed in both the central and local areas. There are no more than 20 political powerhouses like the Song family in the whole country. Shen Huai is the only son of Song Bingsheng, the 3rd son of the Song family patriarch, and his mother's surname is Shen. When I was a child, my parents were separated due to emotional division, and because I had been living with my mother all along, there was very little contact with the Song family in his file information. Although most of the 2nd-generation descendants of the Song family were relatively conservative, by the 3rd generation, influenced by the reform and opening up trend, some could not resist loneliness, and many became corrupt and corrupted, becoming uneven in quality, with Shen Huai being the most prominent. In Shen Huai's view, the previous Shen Huai was completely a parasite on political elites. The indulgence and severity of his character were beyond his imagination, as he had been strict with his upbringing since childhood. Although the behavior of Shen Huai playing with female students at the Provincial School of Economics before was shameful to others, compared to what he did in Yenjing and after studying abroad, his behavior at the Provincial School of Economics is considered to be of good character during his study abroad. Shen Huai even had ulterior motives towards his stepmother's daughter after drinking alcohol. It was this matter that caused his father Song Bingsheng to be extremely angry and completely despair of him. After recalling him to the country, he was exiled to Huaihai province to let him survive on his own. Still his legitimate aunt, afraid that he would cause trouble outside, secretly entrusted his old classmate Chen Mingda, who works in Huaihai province, to take care of 1 or 2. Chen Mingda was the secretary of the Song family master when he was in charge of the work of the National Development and Reform Commission. Although the Song family master left early, he always took good care of Chen Mingda, and his career has been smooth as a result. Chen Mingda's journey from an ordinary cadre of the National Development and Reform Commission to the deputy director of the Huaihai Provincial Development and Reform Commission, and then to the standing committee and deputy mayor of Donghua City, step by step, is directly related to the influence of the Song family behind the scenes. Shen Huai said he was an abandoned son of the Song family, but no matter how he abandoned him, he was also a son of the Song family. Although Shen Huai's behavior is very painful, Chen Mingda still takes good care of him. Even if he works in Donghua City, he will take Shen Huai with him, who is like a rat on the street in the provincial academy, so as not to give him a chance to cause big trouble. Speaking of which, Shen Huai has some connection with Donghua City. Shen Guoxiu, his mother who passed away at the age of 12, was the granddaughter of Shen Yaoting, a national capitalist from Donghua City before the liberation. On the eve of liberation, Sun Yaoting fled with his family to settle abroad, leaving only his 2nd daughter and son-in-law with their daughter Shen Guoxiu to stay abroad. Shen Guoxiu, who stayed in China, and her parents were inevitably impacted in the 1960s and 1970s. They met Song Bingsheng, who was then demoted due to the impact, and after occasional encounters, they married to give birth to Shen Huai. However, this real but unnamed marriage did not last long. By the mid-1970s, the old man of the Song family was rehabilitated and returned to work in the central government. Song Bingsheng left Shen Huai and his son to return to Yenjing for the sake of his future. Shen Huai stayed with his mother on the farm where he was sent to live. At the age of 12, his mother contracted a malignant disease and passed away prematurely. Shen Huai believed that his mother's early death was closely related to his father's abandonment of his wife and children. Although he was brought back to the Song family after his mother's death, he became exceptionally rebellious from then on. In the name of his guardian, he never refused to fill in a single word for the Song family. Perhaps Shen Huai had a self-destructive factor in his personality since he was young. From the age of 12, it seemed that his only purpose in life was to call him his father, and his stepmother who later married into the Song family became unhappy. Of course, Shen Huai was also very unpopular throughout the entire Song family. No family would like children who are ignorant, have bad behavior, and rebellious. His father, Song Bingsheng, himself had relatively mediocre abilities, and he was burdened with such an ignorant and rebellious son who could cause trouble for the Song family at any time, which also marginalized his position in the Song family. In his middle age, Song Bingsheng only managed to secure the position of Deputy Director of the Personnel Bureau of the Ministry of Agricultural Machinery, far from achieving personal goals, and even less than Shen Huai's 3 aunts. Shen Huai's experience of losing his mother as a young boy made him particularly distressed by his maternal grandfather and grandmother who moved overseas after losing his daughter in the early 1980s. Even though he knew that his grandson had a stubborn personality, he was taken overseas when policy allowed him. After Shen Huai went overseas, his rebellious temperament was exposed even more thoroughly, and he almost never did anything that a playboy should have done, such as gambling and fighting. Although the Shen family has a deep background overseas for over 30 years and did not ask him to leave any records, his bad behavior also deeply saddened his elderly maternal grandfather and grandmother. After the incident of drunken assault, Shen Huai's maternal grandparents ultimately gave up hope of saving his grandson, drove him back to China, and even rewrote his will, depriving him of his inheritance rights. Shen Huai leaned his forehead weakly against the steering wheel and cursed inwardly. Nima, this kid comes from a wealthy family, but at a young age, he can destroy himself like this and even cause people to betray him. He really has the ability. This accident made it difficult for Shen Huai to adapt for a while, and he secretly rejoiced that he could become a son of a wealthy family from now on. After sorting out the memories of the original owner of this body, I couldn't help but regret it. It was really a trick from heaven, but it happened to make him stand up for such a rebellious master. The key is that he still cannot be separated from Shen Huai's previous life. Since at that moment, he became Shen Huai, and the secrets behind it could not be compared to outsiders. The rotten life of Shen Huai before was the mess he had to bear. Fuck you, damn it, get out of here, damn it, fuck you. Shen Huai slammed the steering wheel twice in anger, venting his frustration. Okay, since Shen Huai's life was rotten and left behind a lot of mess before, but at least he was able to survive with his body, there's really no reason to complain even if we take a 10,000 steps back, which commoner's son, Diorlang, can achieve the rank of a legitimate official with the 8 classics after just 3 years of hard work. Even the abandoned son thrown out by the Song family is 100 times better than an ordinary person. At that moment, Shen Huai also thought it through. No matter what, from now on, he must live as Shen Huai, as a son of the Song family, and as the secretary of Chen Mingde. Even if the past life rots and falls again, there is still an opportunity to return to the right track. At least Chen Mingde has remembered the cultivation of the Song family and has not given up hope for him. Thinking through all of this, Shen Huai rallied his spirits and secretly warned himself. It's time to bid farewell to your past life. From this moment on, be your Shen Huai well. Just as Shen Huai was sorting out those memories belonging to others, a bus turned into Taowu Road. Hey, Chen Danjia, look over there. Chen Dan was still lost in thought about what happened at the steel plant today when she heard Xiaoli remind her and looked up. At noon, there were not many people on the bus back to Meishi town. Chen Dan and Xiaoli sat in front and back seats, with Xiaoli pressing his forehead against the window glass and looking outside. Chen Dan followed and suddenly noticed that the small car that Shen Huai was taking them to the station was parked next to it. Looking through the car window, Shen Huai pressed his forehead against the steering wheel, unsure of what he was looking at or waiting for. Just as the bus was passing by, Shen Huai turned his head and their eyes met. Chen Dan's eyes caught him off guard, and he felt an indescribable panic. Thinking of giving a smile, but feeling inexplicably flustered, she instinctively avoided Shen Huai's gaze. But as Chen Dan turned around, she saw a beauty and hair salon parked by Shen Huai's side of the road. Through a transparent glass door, there are 3 to 5 seductive girls dressed in revealing clothes in the small shop, posing and flirting outside the door. Chen Dan instantly thought of why Shen Huai parked his car here, his face slightly red, and he cursed lightly. There's really nothing good about a man. Chen Dan flicked his hair that had been messed up by the wind, no longer looking back at Shen Huai. Ah! Xiaoli had a simple mind and didn't know what each beauty and hair salon did. When Chen Dan suddenly said this, she looked back at her in surprise. Chapter 7. The first meeting of Chen Dan, the counselor in law. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Update time. December 6th, 30, red tickets are not awesome. Today's number of red tickets is not more than 6,000. I have 3,000 red tickets to update one. It seems that this is not good. I decided to update one chapter every day, and when the red tickets are 6,000, another chapter will be updated, and it will be 9,000. Brothers, it is useless to hide the red tickets awesome. In addition, don't forget to collect new books. Shen Huai didn't know that the moment he looked at each other, he wrongly left such an impression on Chen Dan. Although Chen Dan is his sister-in-law, she is much younger than him, even compared to Shen Huai at this time, he is 1 year younger. The combination of Chen Dan and his cousin is a quite traditional matchmaking method. On his first blind date, Shen Huai also accompanied him and has left a deep impression on his first encounter so far. Perhaps it was because of Chen Dan's refreshing beauty at that time, just like Xiaoli at this time, giving people a very pure and flawless feeling. At that time, Shen Huai felt that Chen Dan's marriage to a cousin who relied on some family background and did not seek progress was somewhat unfair to her. Others also laughed and said that such a beautiful girl must be married to him in order to be considered talented and beautiful. However, this is the way things are. A good woman marries a bad man, is the reality, and the story of a beautiful and talented woman in a movie. Although Shen Huai is not well liked in the factory, his living standards are high. Although state-owned enterprises have severely rigid management and a tendency towards bureaucratization, one advantage is that they do not easily break the rules on the surface. Shen Huai's technical salary is 2 to 3 times higher than that of ordinary workers, and higher than many management levels in the municipal steel plant. Gu Tong and Zhou Dazue no longer welcome Shen Huai, nor can they openly suppress his salary level. Shen Huai earns over 1,000 or 2,000 yuan per month, including external contact activities. In 1992 and 1993, the local fiscal revenue in Donghua City was in a difficult situation, and even the salaries of teachers could not be paid evenly. Except for officials who were greedy and could make ends meet, ordinary government workers only earned 300 to 400 yuan a month to support their families. Just when his father had just passed away and his mother was seriously ill, his income seemed quite high, but it was not enough to treat his mother's illness. Coupled with his younger sister not yet of age, how could he have the intention of getting married? On the brink of death, the 29-year-old bachelor had never even had a serious relationship. At this moment, Shen Huai wanted to come over and felt that he was truly unjustified. Russia laughed dumbfounded. Speaking of which, who can be luckier than him? If he falls and dies, he can still parasitize into someone else's body and live again. At this moment, Shen Huai felt that the gains and losses in his previous life were really not that important. The past is the past, the key is to cherish and grasp everything in front of you. At this moment, although I am the abandoned child of the Song family, my grandmother is not in pain, and my parents do not love me. Compared to other children of wealthy families, my situation is really tragic. I don't even have a small car that belongs to me. But looking at the 3 districts and 6 counties of Donghua City, how many can I find at the age of 24, who are at the official level? There's really nothing to be content with. The bus quickly turned out from the other end of Taowu Road, and Shen Huai withdrew his gaze, silently hoping that his sister could withstand this difficult period in front of him. At the same time, those who couldn't express themselves clearly and had unclear thoughts also had a little more concern for their sister-in-law Chen Dan. I didn't expect Chen Dan, who hasn't seen much in the past 2 years, to exude the charm of a mature woman all over her body after shedding her initial innocence. Thinking of this, Shen Huai touched his nose and thought to himself. Some regrets can only be hidden in his heart, right? It was also at this moment that Shen Huai turned his head and noticed the beauty salon on the street. Thinking back to Chen Dan's strange and surprised expression when their gaze was at each other, he muttered to himself, did she just want to switch sides? As the earliest city to revitalize and open up, although Donghua's economy has not shown much improvement in recent years, the social atmosphere has long been popular. On both sides of Taowu Road, it seems like a dazzling array of beauty and hair salons have opened overnight. The girls who saw a small car parked on the side of the road and had not been visited by patrons for most of the day had already perked up their spirits. Nowadays, entertainment venues are not as high-end, and there are also charming young girls in roadside shops. They exaggerated their fair and tight arms and thighs, with round and firm breasts. Shen Huai looked over and secretly said that even if these girls engaged in terrible professions, they could not conceal their youthful energy. Seeing the people sitting in the car remain unmoved, the bold girls even exaggeratedly spread their thighs, revealing a corner of their tight short skirts and lace underwear, with their black hair faintly visible. Then he bent down again and let the sizable breasts on his chest sway down from his collar. His fingers hooked on his bright red and charming lips, revealing bold and seductive eyes that stared straight out. Shen Huai was not moved by these street warblers. He just placed his hands on the steering wheel, thinking about his current situation. After waiting for so long without any phone calls, it seems that Gu Yongqiu did not directly expose what happened at the city steel plant today to Chen Mingde. Shen Huai has no intention of going back to the municipal government to directly face Chen Mingde for a while. He needs to adjust his mentality and be more mentally prepared. Shen Huai turned the steering wheel and headed straight to the municipal people's hospital. He could have used the excuse that his left shoulder injury had not healed and stayed in the hospital for a few more days to avoid meeting Chen Mingde too early. Shen Huai went back to the office dormitory to catch up on sleep, while Gu Yongqiu spent the whole morning in the office of the production safety department of the municipal steel plant. The other deputy factory directors all made excuses to sneak out and refused to show their faces, calling him a fire trapped in his stomach, even if he wanted to find someone to vent. Unable to wait for Gu Tong to rush back from Xinjiang, Zhou Dezue couldn't help but see his brother-in-law sulking in the factory. He blushed and said, "Why don't we go to Nanyuan? I know a pair of twin sisters at Emperor International and we can invite them over to dinner together." Looking at his uncle's swollen pig face, Gu Yongqiu was also annoyed, but it was not good to go back to the city directly. If he encountered Shen Huai, that animal in the courtyard, giving him a cold face was not good. Not giving him a cold face was not good, it would only make him embarrassed. The Emperor International Club, a place where food, drink, and entertainment go hand in hand, is highly praised in Donghua City for its meticulous and innovative service. However, Gu Yongqiu is cautious and does not want to go there during the day to promote or indulge in sexual activities. If other leaders in the city bump into him there, it will have a negative impact. However, I thought to myself that there was nothing special in the city today, so spending an afternoon in Nanyuan was also an option. Upon hearing his uncle's request to bring his twin sisters whom he met at Emperor International over for dinner, Gu Yongqiu only snorted lightly and said, "Keep your mouth shut in front of your sister." Gu Yongqiu, as the Secretary General of the Municipal Government and also the Director of the Municipal Government Reception Office, is directly in charge of the Nanyuan Hotel, which serves as the municipal government guest house. If he sees any suitable girl elsewhere, Gu Yongqiu is also used to taking her to Nanyuan to play with. Arriving at Nanyuan, Peng Yong, the manager of Nanyuan Hotel and also the deputy director of the city's reception, rushed over to report that it was Chen Mingde, the standing committee member and deputy mayor. He had just returned to Nanyuan for lunch and asked the staff not to disturb him. Chen Mingde came to Donghua for his appointment without bringing his family, and there were no vacant houses in the standing committee's villa building. Chen Mingde spent most of his 6 months in Donghua eating and staying at the Nanyuan Hotel. I don't know if Shen Huai showed Chen Mingde the problematic accident investigation report from the city steel plant. Gu Yongqiu didn't have time to hide from Chen Mingde at this time, so naturally he wouldn't have gone to see him suffer from mold. The predecessor of Nanyuan Hotel was a group of villas during the Republic of China period. After liberation, it was surrounded and established as a municipal government guesthouse. Although the highest 20-story building in Donghua so far was built in the late 1980s as the main building of Nanyuan Hotel, the most essence of Nanyuan Hotel is the dozens of small buildings left over from the Republic of China. These dozen or so small buildings have gradually become exclusive sites for city leaders to welcome and take temporary breaks. Internally, it is also customary to refer to Building 1 and Building 2 to indicate whether this building belongs to the secretary or the mayor's territory. Although Gu Yongqiu is not the mayor, as the director of the reception office, it is not surprising that he has his own exclusive small building in Nanyuan to gain some benefits. Gu Yongqiu and his uncle advanced to Building 17, drove away all the staff on duty in the building, and then sent the driver from the city steel plant to Emperor International to pick up the twin sisters quickly. The twins were picked up, and Gu Yongqiu realized that his uncle's vision was really good. His appearance was not particularly beautiful, but his skin was delicate, as if he could squeeze it to make water. Gu Yongqiu felt that he had passed the age of looking at women's faces. He touched his tender skin and felt the youthful energy that young girls were about to burst out of, in order to feel that his heart was not aging. This feeling was even more important for Gu Yongqiu at this time. Having eaten and drank enough, I still enjoyed the full service of the twin sisters in the room. Around this time, the feeling of being weak in the morning had slightly eased. Having done something, Gu Yongqiu sat in the same room with his uncle to rest. Zhou's mouth and face were still wrapped in gauze, and his cheeks and eye sockets were still bruised and swollen. Gu Yongqiu couldn't just drive him back at this moment. If he wants his wife to know that his younger brother has been beaten up and he stands next to him without any help, the family may be in a state of chaos. Gu Yongqiu still holds his wife in awe. The twin sisters not only lived well, but also were gentle and considerate, providing full service. They patiently stood behind and pinched the shoulders of Gu Yongqiu and Zhou Dazue. Using very professional techniques. Gu Yongqiu was enjoying his time when the sound of footsteps rushed in. When he got up, he saw Peng Yong, the manager of Nanyuan Hotel, burst in without saying a word and said, "Mayor Chen." Seeing two girls in the room wearing only shorts and bras, Peng Yong quickly stopped talking. Gu Yongqiu saw Peng Yong's panicked expression and knew that something terrible had happened. Gu Yongqiu remained calm and asked his uncle to take the twins away first, before Peng Yong continued to talk about what had happened. Upon hearing Peng Yong talk about the matter, Gu Yongqiu was also shocked. After thinking for a while, he ordered, "You first notify the ambulance to come over. Regardless of whether it is useful or not, or whether it is too late, ask the People's Hospital to send the best medical experts to Nanyuan to participate in the rescue. I will report to the Municipal Party Committee and Municipal Government, and you should not interfere. The duty personnel in Shitsue building should also be immediately controlled, not to ask them to leave, and not to let them talk nonsense." Chapter 8. Beauty Secretary General. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Update time. December 7th, 01, the red tickets are not awesome. Up to now, there are no more than 6,000 tickets. Seeing today's 9,000 tickets and 3 shifts plan, there is no way to complete it. Well, the next one is 12 o'clock. In addition, thanks to Mr. Zhao, the sun is all white. In fact, it doesn't matter, and still SFD and other brothers for their enthusiastic participation. Shen Huai, as the secretary of the standing committee and deputy mayor, was originally staying in the hospital for observation, but was suddenly discharged from the hospital yesterday. Today he came back to request hospitalization again, and the hospital naturally didn't say anything. Just open another ward for him. Shen Huai had a big meal in the ward and slept until after 2 p.m. before waking up. Although Shen Huai tried his best to avoid meeting Chen Mingde too early from the depths of his heart, by this time, Chen Mingde had not received a single phone call, which still made him feel strange. Although he hasn't reported his whereabouts to Chen Mingde since yesterday afternoon, according to Gu Yongqiu's tone this morning, Chen Mingde should know that he left the hospital yesterday and will go to the city steel plant with Gu Yongqiu today. At this moment, Chen Mingde didn't even think about finding him, nor did he instruct anyone to contact him, which was somewhat unusual. The more he thought about it, the more strange it became. Shen Huai couldn't sit still in the hospital, so he simply tidied up and drove back to the city government to see the situation. He thought to himself, what should be faced must be faced, and hiding is not a solution. Moreover, his life needs to return to the right track. After all, he can only rely on Chen Mingde for hope, and avoiding it is not acceptable. Not only can we not avoid Chen Mingde, but we also need to change Chen Mingde's view of him, so that we can reconcile with the Song family and strive for greater support in our career development along the way. Shen Huai was pondering how to reconcile with the Song family, thinking that the strong support of the Song family must be utilized so that he could achieve things he had never imagined before and reach heights he had never imagined before. As soon as he drove into the courtyard of the municipal party committee in municipal government, Shen Huai saw his immediate supervisor, Deputy Secretary General of the municipal government Zhou Yu, coming out of the building from a distance. Zhou Yu impatiently descended the stairs, his chest trembling as if waves were rhythmically moving. Seeing this situation, it is not difficult for Shen Huai to understand why the previous Shen Huai had a persistent reluctance to let go of Zhou Yu, whom he could not play with on the afternoon of autumn. The weather had already cooled down, but sweat beads were all on Zhou Yu's cheeks and forehead. She was restless, with a fair face that seemed to be covered in a layer of powder. She was rosy and her eyes were not as calm as before, as if something terrible had happened. Secretary General Zhou, what happened in the city? Shen Huai drove over and asked. Zhou Yuzha was startled when he saw Shen Huai's pale face, and instinctively frowned with a delicate expression. Although the person in front of me has a handsome face, there is a pale color that has been washed away by alcohol, which is uncomfortable to look at. Especially with Shen Huai's hollow and lifeless eyes, there was still an indescribable evil aura. This was the direct impression Zhou Yu had of Shen Huai when he first came to Donghua half a year ago. Her intuitive impression made her dislike Shen Huai. For most of the year, Shen Huaiming secretly harassed her constantly, and her temperament appeared irritable and arrogant, which made Zhou Yu feel disgusted from the bottom of his heart. In the past, Zhou Yu would probably just nod his head coldly and leave. When he saw Shen Huai suddenly appear, he impatiently asked, "Where did you go?" Secretary General Gu said you went back to the city this morning. I came back from the city steel factory and my left shoulder hurt again, so I went to the hospital again. Shen Huai who made up an excuse. 8 true and 2 false, and I'm not afraid of others checking his whereabouts. What exactly happened? Don't ask too much. If you can drive, just accompany me to Nanyuan. Zhou Yu opened the car door and was about to sit in. Secretary General Zhou, Secretary General Zhou. Someone called Zhou Yu from behind, and Shen Huai poked his head over and saw that it was the car driver from the city mayor Gao Tianhe chasing out of the building. Zhou Yu had already put out one foot and was still in the car door. He turned around and said to the driver of Mayor Gao Tianhe, "You stay and see if Mayor Gao wants to use the car. I'll take Secretary Shen's car to Nanyuan first." If there were other cars that could be adjusted, Zhou Yu would never take his car. Shen Huai became more and more certain that something terrible had happened in Nanyuan, so that Zhou Yu couldn't afford to dislike himself. Perhaps it was subconsciously believed that no matter how big things happened in the city, it was someone else's business and had nothing to do with him at the moment. Shen Huai didn't feel particularly nervous, but instead focused on Zhou Yu's own posture to attract him from Shen Huai's perspective. He happened to see Zhou Yu stepping into the car with one foot, his whole body twisting backwards from his hips. This posture made the coffee-colored, slightly elastic pants she was wearing today very tight on her arms. Zhou Yu was almost straight and without any wrinkles, placing her plump and round buttocks in front of Shen Huai's eyes and nose. Any man would be tempted to look at them. Although Chinese women also value their body shape, they generally exercise less, resulting in narrow hips and a lack of soft and plump curves from the waist to the hips. This flaw is completely absent from Zhou Yu. Zhou Yu was wearing a fitted snow-white shirt on her upper body. As she was still twisting and standing outside the door, Sun Shen could see the round edge of her high-supported chest. The shirt was pulled down, tied tightly to her waist, and the curve from her waist down to her hips was perfect for a mature woman's fullness. Even if you look at it with your eyes, you can understand that as long as you reach out and press it, you will definitely feel the full rebound force there. Although Zhou Yu has always wanted to showcase her ability in her attire, and her eyes are sometimes deliberately sharp, even deliberately wearing a black flat tortoiseshell pair of glasses, her plump and mature figure, bright face, and snow-white and fragrant skin like a girl severely weaken her image as a female official. Shen Huai thought to himself. Although Shen Huai used to be a jerk in his life, he had a good eye for women. Zhou Yu got into the car and noticed that Shen Huai was peeking at him. He became even more impatient and frowned. Her family background means she doesn't have to perfunctory the expressions of male officials in the officialdom, let alone exchange her body for anything. She also knew that those serious officials had dirty minds and lewd eyes. But no matter how much they think about dirty things in their minds, or how much they can't talk about being honest in their daily lives, at least they won't break some rules and dare not openly harass her. Only this Shen Huai was so annoying and looked down upon, even daring to take a nap and touch his thigh. Zhou Yu felt that sometimes he had no choice but to avoid such a scoundrel as long as he didn't go too far. After all, Chen Mingde is a third of the city mayor Gao Tianhe who was airdropped from the province to replace him. He cannot grasp the harassment of evidence and will only make others laugh at him if he causes trouble. Zhou Yu urged Shen Huai to drive to Nanyuan quickly, intentionally not in a hurry to tell him the truth. He thought to himself, tell your son to act on my aunt again, and see if the old lady doesn't chop off your little one, chicken to feed the dog. When the car arrived at Nanyuan, Shen Huai saw the municipal party committee's number 1 car turning in half a step earlier than them. The window of the number 1 car was half open, and the gloomy face of the municipal party secretary Wu Haifeng was revealed. His gaze, which came over, scanned Shen Huai's eyes with an unusually sharp gaze. Shen Huai's mind trembled, and at that moment, he instinctively thought of the big events that had happened in the South Garden, which were related to him. Otherwise, the secretary of the municipal party committee who usually has no connection with the municipal government staff would not look at him so targetedly. The car stopped at Building 6, located deep in the South Park near Tsuehu Lake. In front of the building, a police car and an ambulance were parked. Shen Huai and Zhou Yu got off the car, while the city party secretary Wu Haifeng, who got off the car first, stood in front of the steps of Building 6 waiting for them. Wu Haifeng is a chubby man, but with a burly physique and already dark skin. At this moment, his face is black, and with the increasing dusk, he looks like he is about to explode. Wu Haifeng watched as Shen Huai and Zhou Yu walked over, grabbed Shen Huai and scolded him loudly, "How do you work as secretaries? You have to be by your leader's side at all times on weekdays. Why aren't you in Nanyuan when something happens?" As the big boss of Donghua City, although the secretary of the municipal party committee, Wu Haifeng, has a great vision, he is still recognized by the people around several standing committee members of the municipal party committee. As the largest state-owned enterprise in Donghua City, Shigang Factory has complex interpersonal relationships that are not inferior to those of the municipal party committee in government. Shen Huai has insight into the ups and downs of life and various situations. Furthermore, the previous Shen Huai was also a person who looked down upon others. The family factor also gave him a very high starting point for his vision. When he saw central leaders getting angry and cursing, he felt that the city party secretary's cursing was really childish, and he could feel that there was really a big gap in his aura. Shen Huai didn't just give Wu Haifeng a scolding and scare, he was also a bit stunned, not knowing what serious thing had happened to Vice Mayor Chen Mingde. Although Zhou Yu disliked Shen Huai very much, he couldn't blame him for what was happening at the moment. He didn't explain it for Shen Huai at this time, but later told Wu Haifeng to know the details. Instead, he made him realize that he intended to create obstacles for Shen Huai. Zhou Yu is very strong, so naturally he doesn't want to leave any bad impression on the municipal party secretary Wu Haifeng. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and explained for Shen Huai. 4 days ago, Mayor Chen led a team to inspect the city steel plant when a falling accident occurred at the listed steel plant. Secretary Shen was accidentally hit by a worker who fell down and was slightly injured. Mayor Chen specially observed Secretary Shen in the hospital for a few days, so Secretary Shen was not by Mayor Chen's side when the incident occurred today. I just found Secretary Shen, and I haven't had time to talk to him about the Nanyuan incident yet. Zhou Yu also spoke a long and short sentence, explaining for Shen Huai. Oh, Wu Haifeng snorted coldly, his old face still stiff, and he led his secretary to Building 6. Shen Huai couldn't take a step forward. Zhou Yu saw Shen Huai frozen there and suppressed his voice, saying, Mayor Chen returned to Nanyuan to rest at noon. He had a heart attack and missed the opportunity for rescue when he was discovered. After saying these words, his eyes scanned Shen Huai's face and he lifted his foot and went to Building 6. Shen Huai seemed to have been struck by thunder. He pinned his hope of getting life back on track on Chen Mingda's body. In the afternoon, his mind was still full of thoughts about this matter. How could he have thought of giving him another blow so quickly? Chen Mingda had a heart attack and died. What is this Nima? Shen Huai was stunned for a while, until Zhou Yu walked into the lobby and turned around. It was only then that he was startled and walked into Building 6. Chapter 9. Not afraid of the worst malice. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Update time. December 7th, 01, brother, can you use red tickets to explode me? Brother who forgot to collect new books, click on, collect. Chen Mingda has only been in Donghua for half a year, and his family stayed in the provincial capital without following him. He ate and lived in Nanyuan. However, Shen Huai was afraid that he would take Chen Mingda too seriously and did not live in Nanyuan. Instead, he worked hard and lived in the municipal government dormitory. At the entrance of the corridor stood 2 police officers from 2 city public security bureaus. In the lobby, there were 2 doctors wearing white coats, as well as 2 young girls specially assigned by the Nanyuan Hotel to be on duty in Building 6. Who had not experienced anything. At this moment, their faces were pale and they seemed to be frightened by what had happened. Shen Huai was also very shocked in his heart, thinking to himself, the leaking house happened to rain continuously at night, which probably refers to his current situation. In the morning, I just beat up Zhoda, the uncle of Guyongqiu, and it turned out to be nothing more than relying on Chen Mingda's support. I had to swallow my pride to make Guyongqiu and his uncle. Unexpectedly, Chen Mingda, who could support me, passed away suddenly due to illness in the afternoon. This old man is too damn troublemaker. Shen Huai followed Zhou Yu upstairs, but had no intention of going to see her round buttocks when she lifted her feet. On the 2nd floor, there is the living room. Through the half-open door, one can see Chen Mingda lying straight on the bed in the bedroom, with the sheets covering his face. Indeed, he has passed away. At this moment, Shen Huai had no feelings for Chen Mingda, but he was still shocked by the situation before him. Yesterday morning, Chen Mingda called to inquire about his injuries. Unexpectedly, it was his turn to lie straight in bed today. Life changes are really unpredictable. Wu Haifeng, the secretary of the municipal party committee, stood in the living room with his hands on his hips, his face covered in dark clouds, and he looked like a storm in the future, which made people instinctively want to avoid him. Guyongqiu, as well as Peng Yong, the manager of Nanyuan Hotel, and the leading doctor who rushed to the rescue team, all stood there, reporting the previous rescue situation to Wu Haifeng. How do you take care of the leaders' lives? Mayor Chen came back to rest at noon, how could you not care and ask? How do you ask me to explain to the province when such a thing happens? Wu Haifeng's reprimand was not loud, but it seemed like there was a powerless thunder hidden in the low-pressure clouds. As he spoke, his fingers almost poked into the faces of Gu Yongqiu and Peng Yong, also, who has entered or exited Building 6 at noon. You must report truthfully and not be vague at all. Gu Yongqiu and Peng Yong, as the chief and deputy directors of the Municipal Government Reception Office, were naturally the first to hold them accountable for such a big incident. Nowadays, leaders have a temper, and Wu Haifeng rarely shows mercy in his training. Mayor Chen specifically instructed that no one should worry about him when he returned. Peng Yong's face was very pale. Although he usually boasted and even though some words were already prepared, he couldn't help but tremble when answering in front of the angry boss. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I didn't even see Mayor Chen coming out, so I came over to take a look. It was my fault. Secretary Wu, you should scold me no matter how you scold me, but no one expected such a thing to happen. No one had mentioned Mayor Chen's heart disease before. Did anyone enter or leave Building 6 at noon? No one really paid attention. The 2 staff members in charge of Building 6 on the day shift took a break and ran out when they heard Mayor Chen's instructions. They hadn't been in Building 6 for a while. Messing around. First, control the news and don't let anyone outside gossip. Wu Haifeng scolded angrily, holding his chin, and didn't say anything more. The conversation between the municipal party secretary and Peng Yong caught Shen Huai's attention. He is not the same Shen Huai as before. He has also been brilliant in the city steel factory and has been struggling under people's feet for several years. In just a few short years, his life has experienced a great gap, making his thinking about life much more profound than ordinary people. Looking at problems is much more thorough than ordinary people. Shen Huai and Zhou Yu stood at the door, seeing that others were not looking at him directly, as if they had not noticed his presence. He then leaned sideways into the bedroom and opened the corner of the sheet to look at Chen Mingda's body. At first glance, Shen Huai was startled. Chen Mingda, whose face was pale and lifeless, was not wearing a single piece of clothing under the sheets. Shen Huai stood there in shock. A member of the standing committee of the municipal party committee and the deputy mayor was naked and sick in a hotel room. What a shocking news and political event for Donghua City. No wonder Wu Haifeng asked with a gloomy expression, who had entered or exited Building 6 before. Shen Huai, what are you doing inside? Wu Haifeng only then noticed that Shen Huai had entered the bedroom, and his voice suddenly and sharply stopped him, calling him out. Shen Huai could feel Wu Haifeng's strong distrust of him, and everyone's eyes gathered, calling his face a bit hot. However, before leaving the room, he noticed a small puddle of inconspicuous water in the corner crack of the shower room wall, and there was also some dampness on the floor. His mind moved. It's hard to say that Chen Mingda had a heart attack while taking a shower. Chen Mingda has a heart disease and a bad habit of taking cold showers. Doctors have reminded him that taking a cold shower in cold weather can easily stimulate his heart, but he never cares. If there are no other doubts, this undoubtedly explains why Chen Mingda died naked in the room. Speaking of which, it's also Shen Huai, the secretary, who didn't do enough due diligence before. There was no constant reminder to Chen Mingda to quit the habit of taking showers in cold weather, no notification of Chen Mingda's heart disease to the city, and no constant reminders to Nanyuan to prepare hot water for Building 6. However, as Shen Huai walked out of the bedroom, he glanced at the bathroom, which was quite tidy, and his heart began to wonder. Did it really die on a woman's belly? It's impossible. He and Chen Mingda have been in Donghua for half a year and haven't seen Chen Mingda hooking up with any woman. Does Chen Mingda feel that he is unreliable and that some things are hidden from him? Since you were injured in the city steel plant a few days ago, please take good care of yourself. Don't get involved in Mayor Chen's affairs anymore. The city will assign a dedicated person to take care of it. As a provincial cadre, Chen Mingda passed away suddenly due to illness, and the cause of his death was somewhat mysterious. The handling of the aftermath was naturally not simple, and the province would also send people to Donghua as soon as possible. Shen Huai, as Chen Mingda's secretary, should have been involved in this matter, but Wu Haifeng had heard of Shen Huai's previous style in the province and later in Donghua, and he did not trust him. He immediately made the decision and kicked him out. The great changes he has experienced in the past 2 days are already enough, which has made Shen Huai's nerves thicker. After hearing Wu Haifeng's words, he walked out without saying a word. As he was about to descend the stairs, Zhou Yu glanced over with a hint of schadenfreude hidden in his bright eyes. These damn women. Shen Huai cursed inwardly and deliberately slowed down when he went downstairs. After a while, I heard Zhou Yu's voice coming out. Perhaps Mayor Chen had a heart attack while taking a shower and wanted to go back to his room to get medicine, but didn't have time to. Mayor Chen is aware that Building 6 does not provide hot water at noon, and he has raised 2 opinions about this matter with the reception desk, both of which are recorded. I also plan to provide Building 6 with separate solar energy in 2 days, but I didn't expect. Peng Yong deliberately lowered his voice, but Shen Huai intentionally stood in the stairwell with his body down, still listening to Peng Yong's words clearly. Shen Huai was startled in his heart, and Peng Yong's words made him suspicious. If Chen Mingda did indeed die suddenly from a heart attack, then taking a shower while his body was sick would undoubtedly be a favorable explanation for everyone. Peng Yong was the first to enter the room. Even if he didn't see the puddle of water on the edge of the shower room's exterior wall, he shouldn't be in a hurry to deny that Chen Mingda may have fallen ill while taking a shower. In the room, only Zhou Yu and Peng Yong were talking, and the conversation stopped with just a few simple sentences. Wu Haifeng, Gu Yongqiu and others remained silent all the time, as if the rainstorm was about to come. If it were for Shen Huai before, he would never have heard anything from the conversation between Zhou Yu and Peng Yong. But for Shen Huai at this time, after listening to only a few sentences from upstairs, he could already hear enough doubts. There are multiple explanations for Chen Mingda, who died of a heart attack in his room despite being naked. The 2 most likely types are: 1 is getting sick while taking a shower, not being able to take medication in time, and suddenly passing away. The other one is much more ambiguous and dirty even if there is no strong evidence to support either possibility. From the perspective of convenience in tidying up the situation, we should try to lean towards the first possibility as much as possible. Chen Mingda died of a heart attack while taking a shower. Chen Mingda's family and officials from the province came over to follow the procedures for the funeral and hold a memorial service. For Donghua, even if there are no good results, there will be no aftereffects left. Zhou Yu did not enter the bedroom or bathroom, but standing outside, she directly guessed that Chen Mingda might have died suddenly from illness while taking a shower. It can be said that although she is a woman, she still knows the official rules of turning big things into small ones, turning small things into small ones, and avoiding disputes easily. Peng Yong's intention in saying that was too obvious. It was like directly denying the possibility of Chen Mingda getting sick while taking a shower. If it weren't for falling ill while taking a shower, why would Chen Mingda have died naked in the bedroom? This is too thought-provoking. Shen Huai wouldn't believe it even if he died. Peng Yong's words were purely seeking truth from facts. As a large state-owned enterprise, Shigang Factory can be said to be a microcosm of the contemporary officialdom. Some are engaged in open and secret struggles, while others are deceitful and deceitful. Not a single one is missing, and Shen Huai has since learned enough of the dangers of human nature. Shen Huai almost subconsciously concluded that Peng Yong's words were intentionally stirring up the water. Why did Peng Yong stir up the water? Why did Wu Haifeng remain silent again? Not to mention that there is no evidence to suggest that Chen Mingda's death was related to the peach blossom incident. Even if Chen Mingda really died in the peach blossom incident, as the secretary of the Donghua Municipal Party Committee, he should try his best to conceal it. If it were for the heartless Shen Huai before, Chen Mingda would die if he died. Anyway, since Chen Mingda is dead, he cannot stay in Donghua anymore. He cares whether Chen Mingda fell ill while taking a shower or in a woman's belly. Chen Mingde is the secretary of the old man, and can be considered an official of the Song family. If he really dies on the belly of a woman, it will have a negative impact on the reputation of the Song family and the development of the Song family's descendants and old officials. If Shen Huai had been before, he would have even wished for it. Just that the soul inside this body has changed, Shen Huai at this time even hopes to have the opportunity to get forgiveness from the Song family, and hopes to be able to enjoy the shade under the big tree of the Song family, so he cannot watch the situation develop in the worst direction. What are Wu Haifeng and Peng Yong doing? They certainly wouldn't directly say that Chen Mingde died in the belly of a woman. After all, whether there was such a woman is unknown, and there is no strong evidence. They just need to insist that Chen Mingde passed away naked in the room at noon due to illness, which is enough. The world always has the habit of not being afraid to speculate on others with the worst malice, which is enough to ruin the reputation behind Chen Mingde. But what benefits does this have for Peng Yong and Wu Haifeng? Chapter 10. Uncharted Conspiracy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Update time. December 7th, 02, where's the red ticket? I want the red ticket. Don't forget to collect it. Although he was kicked out by the municipal party secretary, Shen Huai knew he couldn't just leave in a disheartened manner. Even if you stay behind and continue to monitor the development of the situation, it's better than slapping your butt and leaving. Having lived in the city steel factory for several years, Shen Huai could deeply understand that sometimes having a strong self-esteem is not beneficial, and seeking a turning point in things is the most important thing. The two doctors who rushed together to participate in the rescue, along with the two waiters designated by Nanyuan Hotel to be on duty in Building 6, are still in the lobby on the first floor. Those two girls, both with clear eyebrows and beautiful eyes, were only frightened by what happened today. At this point, they dare not even sit down, and their faces are so scared that they have no blood on them. Shen Huai sat over and saw their silent appearance. He wanted them to speak, so he comforted them first. Mayor Chen missed the opportunity for rescue, unfortunately. However, I can't blame you either. When Mayor Chen was resting, I called and I might scold him. Don't be too upset. Yes, it was Mayor Chen who instructed us not to disturb him at noon. We walked away for a moment at noon. How could we have thought that such things would happen? Even if Secretary General Guo was in Nanyuan, it would be too late to notify the ambulance to come. The girl with a ponytail spoke crisply, but her words made Shen Huai's heart skip a beat. When Chen Mingde fell ill, Gu Yongqiu was in Nanyuan. Shen Huai clenched his fist and quietly walked out of the hall. Building 6 is adjacent to Tsuehu and separated by a patch of cedar trees. Across from it is the main building of Nanyuan. At this moment, the sunset is falling on the top of this dark brown sail-shaped tall building, shining on the rippling and magnificent lake water. Only the main building of Nanyuan is reflected in the lake water, like a dark cloud. Who could imagine that in this seemingly warm and peaceful dusk, there is such a dangerous undercurrent hidden? Shen Huai secretly pondered. At first, he didn't understand why Peng Yong, the director of the municipal reception office and the manager of Nanyuan Hotel, deliberately stirred up the water. However, when he learned that Chen Mingde had fallen ill and Gu Yongqiu was also in Nanyuan, he somewhat understood. Shen Huai didn't go anywhere else and turned to the parking lot in front of the small building. At this time, he could only sit in the car and think about problems. In late September, the sun shortened and the sky darkened unconsciously. It had been a long time since anyone walked out of Building 6. Shen Huai had been mentally exhausted and exhausted for 4 or 5 days, feeling exhausted while sitting. He then lay down in the back seat of the car with his head folded, thinking about things. It was unknown how long before he heard footsteps coming over. Shen Huai was about to sit up when he saw Gu Yongqiu's gaze sweep in, as if looking for anyone in the car. Gu Yongqiu just hurriedly glanced at the front seat of the car to see if anyone was there, but he didn't expect Shen Huai to be lying in the back seat. Gu Yongqiu's overly cautious expression gave Shen Huai an extra thought, so he lay there motionless and watched as Gu Yongqiu stood outside the car, took out his brick-sized Big Brother, and pressed his back against the car door to make a phone call. After the phone was connected, I heard Gu Yongqiu reporting to the person on the other end of the line. The first person to arrive at the scene was Peng Yong. There were no other staff members, and Chen Mingde did indeed die naked in the bedroom, with his clothes taken off outside. The two little girls then went upstairs, but they were both panicked and didn't pay attention to the details in the room. I had already tidied up the bathroom, and the traces of taking a shower didn't look so obvious. The province sent someone down, and Chen Mingde had a strong objection to not supplying hot water at noon in Nanyuan. There are indeed records to check. This is a confused account. Gu Yongqiu said a few times before continuing, there is no monitoring equipment in Nanyuan yet. Although there were staff on duty in Building 6 at noon, they happened to take a break at noon and walked away for about an hour. It can be confirmed that no one can explain the issue of whether there were people entering or leaving at noon. The key is that Secretary Wu seems to be a bit indecisive, and he should be able to see something. He reported this matter to the provincial government alone in his small room, afraid that he wants to make things worse. That's right, you're right. Secretary Wu wants to minimize the situation, so he should first unify his rhetoric. He didn't do that, so it seems that he has a big opinion on the province's airdrop of Chen Mingde to Donghua. Shouldn't we just release the news now? Gu Yongqiu said several times, okay. Okay, we'll hold our ground for now. Shen Huai suddenly thought of who the person on the other end of the phone was. Gu Yongqiu is on the phone with Deputy Secretary of the Municipal Party Committee and Mayor Gao Tianhe. After autumn, the weather had already cooled down, but Shen Huai lay in the car, feeling the air inside was stuffy and hot, almost making him gasp for breath. He had just thought that there was something wrong with Gu Yongqiu, but hearing Gu Yongqiu and the city mayor Gao Tianhe writing about the cause of Chen Mingde's death with his own ears still shocked him deeply. Although the death of Chen Mingde has nothing to do with Gao Tianhe and the others, the dirty conspiracy surrounding Chen Mingde's death is definitely no cleaner than their direct murder of Chen Mingde. Peng Yong's words were entirely arranged by Gu Yongqiu. They even tampered with the restroom, making the scene look like Chen Mingde died naked in the room, evoking endless associations from others. They want to murder the reputation behind Chen Mingde in order to achieve their undisclosed goals. Gu Yongqiu called and then returned to Building 6. Shen Huai didn't dare to stay in the car anymore, afraid that Gu Yongqiu would notice that he had eavesdropped on those words just now. Shen Huai bent down and got out of the car, walking all the way to the main building to the east. It was only after confirming that no one had seen him in the parking lot that he breathed a sigh of relief. However, in the blink of an eye, he thought. Even if he could stay out of the situation, how could his situation be better? A cool breeze blew from Tsuehu Lake, and Shen Huai shivered before realizing that his back was wet with sweat. He forced himself to calm down and think about the causes and consequences behind it. The province is quite dissatisfied with Donghua's lagging economic development in recent years. Chen Mingde was airdropped to Donghua to serve as a standing committee member and deputy mayor, hoping that Donghua's stagnant waters could have a chance to thrive. Chen Mingde is knowledgeable, has a bad temper, and pays attention to efficiency. He is not in line with the style of the government in Donghua City. He also wields the imperial sword of the province, and as soon as he comes over, he vigorously rectifies Donghua's economic work. Naturally, he has a great conflict of interests with local forces and has offended many people for the past 6 months. The contradiction between Chen Mingde and the local factions represented by Wu Haifeng and Gao Tianhe is obvious. However, the deepest contradiction is still between Chen Mingde and Gao Tianhe. Anyone with a slight eye in Donghua City can almost see Chen Mingde coming to Donghua, aiming for the position of Mayor Gao Tianhe. In the officialdom, the enmity of taking a throne is greater than killing a father and taking a wife. Faced with Chen Mingde's aggression, Gao Tianhe and his team remained motionless for most of the year. Even though Shen Huai had a big fight at the city steel plant today, Gu Yongqiu could still swallow his anger and not expose the matter to Chen Mingde. At the end of the day, they were afraid that Chen Mingde, who had the support of the province, would find their sore feet. In theory, Chen Mingde's sudden death due to illness has eliminated the actual threat to the position of Deputy Secretary of the Gao Tianhe Municipal Party Committee and Mayor. They should not have used any more means or risked destroying Chen Mingde's reputation behind them. The actual situation is not like this. Chen Mingde passed away suddenly due to illness, and the province can send some other Zhang Mingde and Gu Mingde to Donghua to replace Gao Tianhe in fully controlling Donghua's economic work. The crisis facing Gao Tianhe will not be able to be safely overcome just because of Chen Mingde's death. Gao Tianhe and Gu Yongqiu made a big fuss over Chen Mingde's death, secretly targeting the provincial party committee in government. The death of Chen Mingde, publicly determined, must have been due to illness on duty, but the true master of this world is always the hidden rules lurking in the shadows. The implicit characterization of Chen Mingde's death determines the essence of the event. The public characterization of events requires factual evidence support. An implicit qualitative analysis does not require sufficient evidence, it only needs to make people believe that something exists. Even if there is no woman, how can one believe that Chen Mingde is innocent when he dies naked in a hotel room, without working at the municipal party committee or government office at noon? In order to cover up the fabricated scandal, the province may even deliberately avoid digging deeper, but the sewage on Chen Mingde's body will never be washed clean. Chen Mingde's death is related to the peach blossom incident. The provincial party committee leaders who initially supported Chen Mingde's work in Donghua will naturally lose face and even have to bear the responsibility of recommendation. In the future, if the provincial party committee and provincial government want to intervene strongly in Donghua's affairs, they must have serious concerns. Even if officials are airdropped to Donghua again, they will become powerless and difficult to achieve significant results. The purpose of Gao Tianhe and Gu Yongqiu is here. They view Donghua as their own territory and do not want to see others intervene. Shen Huai had little contact with the city mayor Gao Tianhe before, but after trying to figure out some of the joints, he was also cold-hearted by Gao Tianhe's cruelty. He is really a powerful and ruthless person. Originally, Wu Haifeng was the big boss of Donghua City and should have played a crucial role in determining the cause of Chen Mingde's death. Shen Huai believed that Wu Haifeng should be able to see some doubts, but based on the current situation, Wu Haifeng could not escape the constraints of local interests and was also dissatisfied with Chen Mingde and the excessive interference in Donghua's affairs in the province. Wu Haifeng may even intentionally lead Gu Yongqiu and Peng Yong by the nose. This is the dirty officialdom, this is the ruthless officialdom. Compared to the hidden danger and undercurrents behind this incident, Shen Huaicai felt that the suppression he had received at the city steel plant was truly childish.